Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. Open mic number 186. Jumping back into some more depositions tonight. A couple of pretty short ones. And then the last one, James Lenk, is a little bit longer. It switches dates as well. We'll cover that when we get to it. His is about, I think, roughly about 55 pages. So hopefully we can be done in two and a half hours, I think, give or take. We'll see. We'll see where we land and go from there. So first up, let's say hello to everyone. Like Kay. How are you doing, Kay?
Hey, I'm good.
Awesome.
Watching the football game.
Yeah, me too. I got it on in the background for the first time in, I don't know, 2 decades. I don't know. I'm kind of being sarcastic. The Lions are actually in the playoff.
Man.
Yeah,
It's
for the
amazing.
first time in 2 decades or something. Yeah,
Has it been 2 decades? I was guessing. I
it's
knew it'd
been
been
a
a long
long
time.
time. It's been about
Yeah.
that, I think. Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Sweet. Well, how you doing, Susan?
Doing all right. A little dragging a little bit and working, but I'm trying to stay awake.
Well, hopefully we can keep your interest long enough and not knock you out. So we'll try.
Yeah.
And then JD, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. So looking forward to tonight's podcast, and hello to everybody in chat and also on the panel.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay. And then Neverly.
Hi, everyone. So nice to see you again. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon over here in gloomy California. 63 degrees along the coast.
Sounds good.
Don't hate me. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 20 degrees here, not including the wind chill. So, and we're supposed to get more snow. So
It's season
better than-
appropriate, let me tell you.
that's right. Better than that three-letter word that Susan said a minute ago. Ice.
Ice, baby, ice.
Yeah, you keep that
Yeah.
shit down there. Want no part of that. Okay.
Should we jump in?
Well, we're fixing to jump in. I want to have Susan go ahead tonight and say hello to everyone that's in the chat. Greet everyone right quick, and I'll pull up the documentation. And that way we're getting somewhere.
Okay, first one on I see is JD. He's also on the panel. Hey, JD. Mira Pennington is with us. Sheila Hawkins, hello. Brooke Sevilla, hello, Brooke. Brooke Sevilla. Melanie Wilkinson, hello. Let's see. I said Sheila Hawkins. Pastor Bear is with us. Trav is listening in a heat wave in Brisbane. Aw, sounds good to me. Pete Moss, when Pallet is in the chat. Who is that? Nirvana Keller was with us as well.
Troublemaker,
Cher.
I tell you. Watch out for her.
Troublemaker. Yeah. Hi, Cher. Rumor has it. Hello. Let's see. Paul Ward is with us. Hi, Paul. Oh, it jumped on me. Let's see. PJ Anderson. Hello. Graham Moss. Hello. I believe I've gotten everyone. There's Dr. Silkman jumping in. Hey, Doc.
Yeah, Doc had a couple things to take care of. He's going to try to join us when he gets done, if he can.
There's Under Your Scars. You just jumped in. Hello.
Yep.
Welcome, everybody.
Okay, is that it? We good?
I believe I've got it done.
Okay. So just a brief synopsis of where we were and then where we are. We are on, as you can see, September 22nd, 2005. We didn't have time to finish these last two the last time. So, like I said, these are two short ones. Vernon Kliment and David Dvorak. These first two, well, actually, all three of these are Manitowoc County employees. and I'm 99.9%. Yeah. Well, I know this guy's out. This Vernon Kliment, he's retired. I can't remember if Dvorak is. I don't think he is at this point in time. And then of course James Lenk will be the last one. His is on October the 11th. There's like 4 or 5 on the 11th, at least 4, and his is the first one. So we're getting near the end. I think there's 9 left total, I believe, something like that. So, all right. Let me go down and we'll look at, and hopefully, we can, if need be, we'll trade out parts reading or whatsoever, or whatever. And you can see here 24 minutes for his deposition. But we'll look at the lawyers right quick and who's present. Of course, we're going to have Glenn and Kelly. Well, actually, it says Kelly. I don't see Glenn on here. So maybe Glenn wasn't in this one. Then Covelli. I'll do Covelli and Bascom. And then, Susan, do you feel like reading?
Sure.
Neverly, you feel like reading?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to have you guys read the main parts, and me and Kay can take up these side lawyers. So I'll do Bascom. And let's see who we've got here. I'll do Bascom and Paulum. And if you could do Meyer. Okay. I don't know how much
Okay.
these people talk. I doubt it's very much. So then, of course, Stephen Avery's present. Got a couple of exhibits here that look like that were presented. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. This is from my vision, not anyone necessarily on screen. I know you guys can probably see it, but I'm 2/3 blind, so hopefully I can see it about right there. If I have trouble, I'll zoom it in a little bit more, but that should be pretty good.
Who am I
So-
again? I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, you could be Kelly if Neverly could be Kliment. So you're going to be asking the questions, Susan?
Yep.
And I'll be answering.
Yep.
Okay. Who's Mr.
Are we
Paul?
ready? Oop.
That's one of the
Oh,
lawyers.
okay.
That's
Okay, I'll
that's,
get it. So I'll be answering. Okay.
Who the
Are
hell
we
did I say?
ready or?
Well, I'm looking here. I'm confused myself. Where's Pollen? Let me scroll up. I apologize. You gently scroll up
problem.
here. Yeah, I'm doing Bascom and Pollen, and Kay is going to do John Mayer.
Okay.
Take it away whenever you're ready, Susan.
Okie doke. Mr. Kliment, could you tell me where you live now?
I live at,
Wait a minute. I think we've been agreeing to.
Just generally. I'm not asking his.
Oh, not the specific address.
What community do you live in?
I live about 10 miles north of Manitowoc.
Okay.
I'm in the rural area.
All right. And would you tell me how old you are and your date of birth, please?
I'm 73. My date of birth is 11/27/31. 31.
Yeah, he passed away in 2013, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check. And you're retired from the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, is that right?
Yes.
All right. When did you retire?
January 3rd, 1987.
And what was your position in the department at the time that you retired?
At the time I retired, I was the undersheriff.
Tell me, what at that time was the job of the undersheriff?
To act in the absence of the sheriff.
And is the undersheriff ordinarily, at the time you were in the department, somebody who is appointed by the sheriff?
I was appointed by the sheriff.
All right. And when were you appointed undersheriff?
I can only give you an approximate. It was, I think, May of 1985.
So that would be just roughly 2 months before Ms. Bernson was assaulted.
I don't recall the date she was assaulted, so I guess I can't tell you that.
Okay. How long had you been in the department as of the time that you were named the undersheriff?
I suppose 28 and a half years, something like that.
Are you guys hearing those weird sounds?
I am. I'm not sure. It's
Yeah.
something with Neverly's headphones.
I got nothing going on.
I believe you. It's. I don't really know what it is. I've never heard anything quite like it.
I haven't either.
It's so
Wow.
strange. It's like you're talking Neverly, you're reading the part, and then every 3 or 4 words it goes.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let me get rid of the AirPods. Maybe that will help. Hold on. Is this better?
It is better so far.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so let's do it this way.
We'll see how that goes.
Well, let's see. If we go 30 years, take us back to, so about 1957 or so.
56, actually.
Okay.
I started in July of 1956.
And, I'm not going to hold you to dates on this, but if you could, starting in 56, would you tell us the various positions you held within the sheriff's department up to when you became the undersheriff?
As I started, I was a dispatcher for several years, and then became a patrolman and was promoted to sergeant and lieutenant, and then a captain, which was called the support division director, and then, of course, appointed as an undersheriff until my retirement.
Sorry. It's still happening, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's so
it's just-
weird.
It is. I can hear it too. It's like I've never heard anything quite like it, but whatever. It's fine. Let's just read.
Okay. And at the time that you were the undersheriff, was there a man named Jean Couchet in the department?
Yes,
The pencil.
What was his position?
at the time, I think he still bore the title of chief deputy, but he was not performing in that function.
When you say he bore the title of chief deputy, was that a position that was in existence at the time?
I would have to say no, because then I would have taken over those duties.
Can you explain this to me in a way that an ordinary layperson would understand it? Was there some dispute about who was going to be the number 2 person in the department?
No dispute as far as I'm concerned, no.
Okay, well, what happened with respect to chief deputy and undersheriff?
I really am not 100% sure on that.
Tell me your best recollection.
I think it evolved over some situation of a transport or something that the coroner requested and was denied. And I can't even tell you where the trip was for or anything like that.
Kind of familiar. Warner was denied.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some trans.
It was
Go ahead.
it was a problem that I was not involved with, so I don't know.
Which problem was it?
The sheriffs,
And who was the person involved in the transport?
I have no idea.
How did that relate to Couchet?
He was the chief deputy of the time and refused the transport. Ooh.
Well,
Sorry. And was there something wrong with that in the sheriff's eyes, as far as you know?
Apparently so.
Because the sheriff, wanted him removed from the chief deputy position and you to be the number 2 person?
That's what I ended up being.
Okay. And before that, you had been a captain.
Yes.
So at the time that you were a captain, you were the captain in charge of the support division. Is that right?
Yes.
Was there any position of undersheriff in existence when you were a captain?
No.
So arising out of whatever happened in this transport matter, the sheriff created the position of undersheriff and filled it with you. And then Couchet went into whatever position he went into.
That's what I would say. Yes.
All right. Did you, before this incident occurred, did you and Couchet get along fine?
Sure.
Okay. After it occurred, did you get along fine?
Yes.
All right. I know you've told us that your duties were to act in place of the sheriff when he wasn't available as the undersheriff. But what were some of your other duties? What were you, when he was around and you were around, what were you expected to do?
Well, I was actually in charge of the office staff, the records, and the communication section.
Okay. And were there captains or lieutenants who reported directly to you?
No, not in my division.
Okay.
Well, I take that
Well, I mean,
back. There was a lieutenant as a court officer who did report to me.
okay. I'm meaning in your capacity as undersheriff. Were there captains reporting to you?
Not directly, indirectly through the chain of command.
And what would that chain of command be when you say indirectly at that time?
I guess as in any military or quasi-military organization, sergeants report upwards, lieutenants report upwards.
Captains report upward?
Sure.
So actually the captains would report to you and then you'd report to the sheriff.
In what position are you talking about now?
Undersheriff.
Sure.
Okay. So all of the captains were subordinate to you when you were in the position as undersheriff.
Yes.
Okay. Were you on duty on July 29th, 1985 when Penny Burnson was assaulted?
I don't recall.
All right. Do you remember how first you found out about the assault?
I don't recall that either.
Do you recall whether you were contacted that evening by Tom Pasurik concerning what had happened to Mrs. Burnson?
I don't think so.
Okay. Is it your recollection that you found out about it when you came to work?
I guess I'd have to say yes.
Do you remember from whom you found out about it?
Well, it was the custom each morning. The captains and I would go over everything that happened the day before and see what was progressing and what should be done and that sort of thing. And so we would see the reports in the morning.
Okay. And do you remember whether or not any particular captain reported to you in the morning on July 30th about what had happened in respect to Mrs. Burnson?
No, I don't.
Do you remember seeing the records about what had happened?
No, I don't remember that.
Recall talking with Tom Pasurik that morning, the morning after Mrs. Burnson had been assaulted, about what had happened.
No,
Did you know that Stephen Avery was in jail that morning?
I really don't know.
Okay. You knew Don Bells at the time, right?
Don Bells?
Yes.
Yes.
He was the captain of detectives at that time.
Yes.
So in a felony of the type that was involved in the assault on Mrs. Burnson, he would ordinarily be the person who was in charge of the investigation.
He could be.
Okay. Who else might be?
I suppose the sheriff.
Okay. Were there any other cases that you recall where the sheriff was in charge of an investigation than the investigation of Mrs. Burnson, of the assault on Mrs. Burnson?
I guess I can't answer that. I don't recall that.
Excuse me, 1 second. Was the sheriff in charge of that investigation, that Burnson assault, as far as you know?
I think so.
Okay. Did there come a time when the sheriff talked to you about the investigation of Stephen Avery and the arrest of Stephen Avery in connection with the assault on Mrs. Burnson?
No,
He never had a conversation with you about it?
no.
That's really
All right.
strange. He's
Yeah,
the
that's-
undersheriff.
Yeah, very weird.
Yeah.
All right. Do you recall having any conversations with a man named Leroy Bilkey about the Penny Burnson assault?
No, I don't.
Do you recall having any conversation with Leroy Bilkey respecting the arrest of Stephen Avery in January of 1985 because he had recklessly endangered a woman named Sandy Morris?
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Okay. Did you ever talk with Don Bells about the Penny Burnson assault?
No,
Okay. Did you ever talk with Ken Peterson about the Burnson assault?
no,
Do you have knowledge of the fact that Boucher did a composite drawing of the person who was the assailant of Penny Burnson?
no, I don't.
Wow.
This is useless.
He knows nothing.
Yeah.
During the time that you were the captain in the sheriff's department and then the undersheriff, did you know any of the detectives within the city of Manitowoc Police Department?
Sure.
Tell me who you knew.
Well, Captain Schmidt. I'm trying to think who they were at the time.
Do you know Richard Bray?
Yes,
Did you know Tom Bergner?
yes,
Did you know Henry Ospedale?
yes.
What was the custom or practice at that time, if you recall, about cooperation between the city and county, city police department and the county sheriff's department concerning the investigation of crimes?
I would say good.
You cooperated with each other and exchanged information?
Sure, yes.
Did you do that with the people that you've told us about, Captain Schmidt and Tom Bergner and Richard Bray and Henry Ospedale over the years?
You mean in regard to this case or?
No, in regard to cases generally.
I directly didn't, but the department did.
Okay. Guys, I need to have about 3 minutes.
Okay.
That's fine. I can just jump in.
Okay.
You can take over when you get back. What line are we on?
We are on line 8.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, and do you know whether or not the same thing was true with respect to this case?
I don't know. I would assume so, but I don't know.
Okay. At any time, did you ever discuss this case with Thomas Bergner?
No,
Did you ever discuss it with anybody in the city of Manitowoc Police Department?
I'd say no.
Amongst the records that you were responsible for when you were in charge of the support division, did you keep that responsibility when you became the undersheriff?
Yes,
Okay. Did those records include jail records?
yes, they did. Yeah.
Okay. And did the jail records include mugshots, photographs?
Yes, I think they have. They were in the jail area, I believe.
All right. I'm going to ask you this question based on your general knowledge as the man who was in charge of the records at the time. When, let's say, a particular suspect is arrested and booked, and this is at that time, and his photo is taken, what becomes of the photo once it's taken?
To the best of my recollection, the photos remain in the jail area
All right.
where the initial booking took place.
Okay. Now, let's suppose that it's a couple of years later, and the same person who's been photographed on this prior instance is arrested in connection with another alleged crime, and the second booking photograph, is taken on the occasion of the second arrest. Okay? You understand what I'm asking?
I think so.
All right. What becomes of the second photograph?
The second photograph, the last one taken,
Yes.
I would suppose they would be filed with the other photograph.
All right.
That would be my recollection.
And is this the first photograph that existed from 2 years previously, then disposed of, thrown away, or is it kept?
I would think it would be kept.
Okay. Is there a reason why you would think it would be kept?
I guess you just don't know, don't throw records away, in my opinion.
Particularly photographs
Any records.
of criminals.
Any records.
Okay. So you don't know of any, while you were in charge of these records and up to the time that you retired, you don't know of any principle that when that second photo gets taken, you get rid of the first one.
I don't.
Okay. In your opinion, would you think it would be? Do you think it would be irregular if the first one was disposed of, Mr. Pollen? I'm going to object at this point from foundation, but go ahead, sir, if you know.
Yeah, by whom and for what purpose?
You can answer.
Form and foundation.
Be irregular? I would think it would be something that wouldn't be done as a practice. Could be an error or something like that.
Okay, but not as a practice.
I wouldn't think so, as I recall the situation.
Okay. In this matter involving Stephen Avery, at any time did any investigators from the Department of Justice get in touch with you to interview you about this case?
No.
Did anyone from the Department of Justice call you at all to talk to you about this case?
No.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take a moment. We can go off the record while you do this. This is from Exhibit 15 in this case, which is Exhibit 15 is a set of investigatory reports that we have from the Department of Justice investigators. This one is pages 5529 to 5530, and it's in their recordation of a conversation, an interview that they conducted with Leroy Belkey, and you're mentioned in this at a particular point. But I want you to read the whole thing, if you would, okay? We'll go off the record. We'll go off the record until you have had a chance to complete your reading of it. Reporter off the record, and I stay off the record here. It looks like for 2 minutes. Reporter, we're back on the record.
I'm back,
Yep,
Jack,
back.
if you want me to.
Yep. You take over line 15. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Kliment, have you completed your reading of the exhibit?
Yes.
All right. Is Leroy Bilkey a friend of yours?
He's a friend, yes.
Okay. Are there other officers from the department who are also retired whom you regard as friends?
Sure.
Tell me who they are, please.
Oh, me, Jim Banishek. The retirees are few. They're dying off. Oh, how sad. Well, it would be Belkey. Belz is a friend.
Reporter Belz, B-E-L-Z.
Belz, Don Belz.
Mr. Is that me, Pollen? Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that's me. Yeah, Mr. Pollen, B-E-L-Z. Reporter, thank you.
Robert Belkey, Ray Hronek. I guess the list just goes on.
Is former Sheriff Kasurik a friend of yours?
I would suppose.
Why do you say suppose?
I haven't seen him in a couple of years, but I would consider him a friend.
A couple of years would be 2003?
I don't know exactly.
After it became public that Stephen Avery didn't commit this crime, did you talk to Tom Kasurik about it at all?
No.
Okay. Having read this document, do you recall having any discussions with Leroy Bilkey about this case?
I do not.
All right. In this document, you'll notice that Bilkey says Kliment was the chief deputy of the sheriff's department and he may have additional information, end quote. Do you know why Bilkey would think that of you at the time that he spoke to the agents?
I have no idea.
Up until you read this report, did you have any knowledge of any dispute between Sheriff Kasurik and Don Bells about how the investigation was handled?
No,
Bells ever talked to you about the Avery case?
no,
Bilkey ever talked to you about the Avery case?
I don't think so.
Bilkey ever talked to you about Stephen Avery and the Avery family?
Not really. I never knew Stephen Avery.
Well, did Bilkey ever tell you about surveilling Stephen Avery with respect to Stephen's alleged behavior towards Sandra Morris?
I don't know what you're talking about. No.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Bascom. Hold on a second. I got to do one thing here before we start. And if one of you could look right quick, see if there's any questions or comments. I've been trying to look at my iPad, but I may have missed something. Anything?
No, I just do not know how am I sounding because on my end, I sound just grand. I'm kidding, but yeah, I don't have any issues.
Well, it sounds like it's almost sounds like there's a voice changer or something. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying it's what it sounds like. Right,
Well,
right,
I
Susan?
can disconnect and reconnect if you want me to.
No.
Are we sure
no.
it's Neverly even? I don't even know if it's you, Neverly.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
it's not
It's
narrowly.
You're a robot.
Well.
They're
Okay,
picking on me.
I'm ready to go. Here we go. All right, this is Mr. Bascom. I just have a couple of questions. Reporter, one moment, please. Off the record. They're off the record, looks like, for not even a minute. My name is Tim Bascom. We're back on the record, Mr. Bascom. Sorry. I represent Manitowoc County. I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Kelly was asking you some questions about photographs that are kept at the jail. You recall those questions?
Yes.
Okay. You got to answer out loud for the record.
Right.
It's my understanding from testimony in this case that once a photograph of somebody who has been arrested is taken, those photographs or that photograph or photographs are then placed in an inmate card. Is that correct?
And kept in the jail, as I said.
Yeah, exactly. But they're actually placed on a card with the inmate's name on it, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, there's been testimony that when a situation arises, such as one that Mr. Kelly was talking about, in fact, for example, that an inmate, a person is arrested, charged with a crime, and their mugshot is taken, and that's put on the inmate card. And then 2 years later, that same person is arrested for a different crime, and a new mugshot is taken. There's been testimony that the procedure at the jail was for the jailers to take the old photograph out of the inmate card and dispose of it, and then put the new photograph in the inmate card where the old photograph was. My question to you is, were you aware of that procedure while you were working in the sheriff's department?
No.
I object. And I object on the basis that the foundation is faulty, that the record is being mischaracterized, that the information is hearsay. And I move to strike everything other than the question that was asked.
Go, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, you don't take no shit off anybody. Go ahead and you can give us your answer. Were you aware of such a procedure?
No.
That's all I have.
I have nothing further.
Order says, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. We're done with that one.
That
Cut.
hurt-
So
that
I have a
hearsay
question
wasn't
or a
true,
comment.
I would say.
Yep. What's your comment?
Why would I ever throw away the other
Yeah.
photograph? That just does not sound legit. Because
wasn't
at the
true.
time, at the time, you just have to keep on, even if they have 10, why would you dispose 9 previous? No, that does not sound good. I mean, correct.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound right to me either.
Yeah, me either. And he said no to that question.
Yeah.
He didn't remember that being a procedure. So,
Yeah.
And Kelly said it was hearsay. So, I think
Yeah.
somebody's trying to cover up something. Reason for
Yeah.
No.
the photo switch.
Who would want to? Like, who would
Yeah.
want to cover things up? Come on.
Well,
Right.
you know, another thing that's really
Sorry.
Guess some get caught in the throat.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a little odd to me him being the undersheriff. That means if Kosoric, gets killed, he could step into the role, and he doesn't know anything about the Avery case.
Yeah. Sounds like
Right?
bullshit.
I'm
Total
not really-
bullshit.
Hard to believe.
Or-
How about hard to
Or the
believe?
Sandra
not bullshit.
Morris case, you know?
or the Morris case, yeah, or the Penny
Yeah.
didn't know much about the Penny Bernstein case. I mean, what does he do really? Just go clock in and
Right?
sit around, read the newspaper?
Yeah,
I
that
don't
didn't
know.
sound believable.
No.
Okay, so I just
You
turned
don't
off
get
the
to that
YouTube on
level
the
without being
laptop.
correct.
Let's
Wait,
see if
what?
I sound better. I turned off the YouTube. Maybe that was interfering somehow. I don't know why.
No, it's still
So-
doing it.
Still happening.
I'm so sorry,
Maybe-
you guys.
Maybe
It's like
try and
there's
go
another-
out. And come back.
It's like there's
Okay, I'll
another
get out.
program. It's like there's another program running in the background that's interfering with your audio.
There's
I'm not saying it.
nothing going on. Okay, I'll get out and
Gonna
get
jump.
back in.
Okay. We do have a couple of new people I see popped up in the chat. I see Kat. I didn't see her earlier. And I see Ronica Clack. And who else?
And also there was
Emily.
Six,
Yep.
Mr. Webb.
Yeah, and we got to remember Sheila Hawkins is cooking dinner, so we're gonna have that here in a little while.
Ooh,
That's right. That's right.
homemade
Okay,
something.
Nevertheless back. Let me get
Auto
her
there.
added here.
It was Italian.
Okay, so let me get this back on stage here. Nevertheless trying to connect. I'll wait for her. Oh, there she
Who's
is.
next? Dvorak.
Yeah, Dvorak is next.
David Dvorak.
David Dvorak. That's right. And he was married to Judy.
I was just going to say that
That's okay.
I
Hello.
was just going to say that you don't get to be under sheriff without without knowing the things that you have to keep secret, without being corrupt, basically. You don't
Right.
promote
If you're
to
under
that
corrupt
level.
sheriff. Yeah.
That's right. So, I mean,
That's what the
in all these wrongful conviction cases, I've never seen someone at that level who I would say, oh, well, these people are corrupt, but he's not.
well, yeah, I mean he'd been there for a long time. I mean since the late 50s, you know.
Since the year
Neverly?
before I was born.
Yeah. Neverly, are you able to talk? We can't hear you again. It's not working.
Uh-oh.
I'm not sure
I
what's
saw
We can
that.
read lips, though.
Yep.
Yeah. Nope, still
Nope.
can't hear you.
Still
I can
can't
see you
hear you. No,
See you talking, but
it's crazy.
yeah, her audio's just kicking her butt.
I was having all kinds of trouble with my audio, and I finally, Dell helped me. I needed a new driver. update the driver. Seems
Oh,
to be
yeah.
working fine since then.
Yeah, you sound good. If you're using your AirPods,
No.
it might be not,
Don't
it's
hear you.
probably no, it's probably not connected to Bluetooth. It's saying, I don't see you. Bluetooth can be such a pain in the butt too sometimes. I don't really have any trouble much out of this computer, but my other Dell computer, it sometimes there was a time, man, it gave me a fit. Oh, she's gonna jump out. Hopefully, get it fixed and come back. Anyway, I'll go ahead and
Hey,
pop
the
this on
Lions
stage.
won. Lions
They
won.
did.
Lions
They
won.
did. Yeah, they did win. That's probably a big celebration in Detroit. So this is David Dvorak. Let me get over here to the document. We'll scroll down, see who's here, give Neverly a chance to maybe work on her thing and see if she's going to be able to come back. And we got Kelly, but Glenn's not here again. And we got Covelli, Bascom, Holland, and Mayer. There's Neverly back. Hold on. Try again.
Me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to say is that this Mr. Kliment, he just said on the stand that his duties include as being the undersheriff, that when he gets on the shift, he gets a report of what happened the previous day.
Right.
So
Right.
why would nobody ever tell him about Sandra Morris incident and Penny Bierson? I mean, both are kind of a big deal.
And Stephen Avery.
And
You didn't
Stephen
even know
Avery
that
both.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the common denominator.
He was lying.
Especially
Yeah.
anyone that they're surveilling, you know? He's going to know
Yes.
about that.
Yes.
He's probably
Your
going to have to
audio's
approve
perfect.
those assets.
Yeah, your
Right.
audio sounds perfect now, Neverly.
Yeah,
No problem at all.
I'm on my phone. Yeah.
It's working perfectly, yeah, or it sounds great.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. So we basically got the same. We got an extra lawyer here. Let me get back. So we'll split this up again. If you two want to continue to read, if you want to trade off, that's fine too. You guys good to continue to read?
I'm
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Okay. So,
I just have one question, Jack. If you could drop this document in Foul Play somewhere so I can open it up somewhere on a bigger screen.
it's on the open mic. It's in the
It
open
is?
mic room. Yeah, all three of
Okay.
them are.
Yeah.
Yep. So Susan's going to do Kelly. I'll do Covelli and Bascom. Okay, if you could do Pollen and Mayer.
Okay.
And of course, Stephen Avery's present. Looks like he had one exhibit. So let me zoom this one up just a little bit. Whoa, that's too much. There we go.
I found it.
Get it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So am I Mr. Dvorak?
You are Mr. Dvorak.
Okie dokie.
All right, Susan, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Dvorak, would you tell us your date of birth and age, please?
March 7th, 1947.
And how old are you?
58.
You're employed by the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
What position do you have presently?
Presently, I'm a process server.
And how long have you been with the department?
20 years.
Do you remember when you started?
August of 85.
And when you started, what position did you hold?
As a jailer.
So he wasn't even at the time of the assault. He wasn't working for the department
Apparently not.
because that happened in early February of '85.
The Morse assault did, and then the
Yeah.
Penny Bernstein was in July.
July, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So they were both before.
That's right.
And when you started, what position did you hold?
Well, I think you skipped some, didn't you?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did.
We're on
Do you remember
page
when you started?
August of '85
And when you started, what position did you hold?
as a jailer.
Did you start on August 1st?
The first or the third, first week.
Would you, if you could, start with the position you held in August of '85 as a jailer and take us through the different positions that you've held over the years? And, I'm not asking you to pin down dates, but if you could just give us a rough idea of how long you served in the positions.
Sure. I started August of '85 as a jailer. I held that position for 1 year. Then I went to patrol, and I had that for about 5 years. Then I went to bailiff in the courthouse, and that was 5 or 6 years. And then I left that to become process server.
Okay. And for a period of time that you were married to Judy Dvorak?
Correct.
When did that marriage end?
1990.
Okay. And when did it begin?
1971.
All right. And are there children of that marriage?
Yes, 2, a boy and a girl.
Would you tell me their names and ages?
Douglas is 33 and Victoria is 30.
And at some point after your marriage with Judy ended, you've remarried?
Correct.
And what's your present wife's name?
And I got divorced and remarried again. Whoa.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, let's take them one at a time then. When did you remarry the first time?
Now we're scratching. Let's see. I must have gotten married in '91, and I was married to Sue for 9 years, and then I married Donna.
So from 91 to 2000,
Correct.
you were married to Sue.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And your present wife is Donna?
Correct.
And when were you and Donna married?
He's doing it again. Let's see. We were married August 4 years ago. So we just had our anniversary.
Okay, so August of 2001.
Correct.
All right. And are there children that you have of either the second or third marriage?
No.
Okay. When you were married to Judy Dvorak, there was a period of time in which she was employed by the sheriff's department?
As a reserve deputy, correct.
Okay. And at the time, what did she do as a reserve deputy?
She did some transporting, some work as a jailer, pretty well any function that they were asked.
Okay. And she was a reserve deputy at the time that Mrs. Burnson was assaulted in the summer of '85?
Yes.
Did she become a deputy before you joined the department, a reserve deputy?
I was a reserve deputy also,
Okay.
till I went full time.
All right. And what did you do as a reserve deputy?
Well, mainly transports, working some security here and there. Once in a while, I was a jailer.
Okay. In the summer of 1985, before you came on board as a full-time deputy, were you holding any other job than the job as a reserve deputy?
Yes, I was a full-time farmer.
Okay. We've had some testimony in this case. I don't remember it exactly, but I'm going to just take a shot at describing it briefly. Somebody conjectured or suggested that You may have been on duty in the jail on the night of the day that Mrs. Burnson was assaulted. Do you remember that?
No, I would say no for sure, but I don't remember it if I was. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But no,
So you don't, do you have any recollection of collecting booking photographs and bringing them over to Sheriff Kasurik that evening? Anything like that?
no, no, no.
Okay. At the time, you and Judy Dvorak lived not far from Stephen Avery. Is that right?
Correct.
Would you describe the relationship between your home and the Avery home, the physical relationship?
My driveway was a quarter mile long, and when you came out of my driveway onto the highway, Steve would have lived right across the road, just maybe 50, 60 feet to the west.
Okay. Is it true that Judy Dvorak did not like Stephen Avery at that time?
I couldn't honestly say yes or no on that. I don't think that she wouldn't have liked him, but I don't see why she wouldn't have.
Did she express to you at all that she felt him to be a dirty and vindictive man in the summer of 1985?
Again, I wouldn't remember that if she had said it.
Was she critical to you concerning Stephen with respect to the way Stephen treated his children?
I can't recall it ever coming up.
All right. Your wife was on duty the evening that Mrs. Burnson was assaulted. Your wife, Judy.
From what I know, yes, but I can't remember that she was.
Well, do you know that she was called to the hospital by Sheriff Kasurik
Yes, yes,
to attend to Mrs. Burnson
yes,
after Mrs. Burnson had been assaulted?
correct.
Okay. Colin,
J-
That's K.
That's you.
you're Colin, I think.
I'm Bascom and Cavelli.
Sorry, I read it, but I was muted. Wait till he
Oh.
gets the question out before you answer.
I'm sorry.
Do you have any recollection of whether you were working that evening?
Oh, I'm almost positive I wasn't.
All right. Do you recall whether or not you were home?
That's why I'm not quite positive, but I don't think I was working.
Do you know a woman named Ramona Marcel?
Yes, she would live farther west of Steve Avery.
Okay. So she was in the same neighborhood with you and Stephen Avery?
Yes,
Do you know a woman named Sandra Morris?
yes.
And where did Sandra Morris live relative to you, Mrs. Marcel and Steve Avery?
On the road that went between Steve and I, another half mile down to the west, there was an intersection. And then if you go 3/4 miles back to the south is where Sandy would have lived.
Okay. And was Sandy Morris at that time a reserve deputy in the sheriff's department?
No, her husband, Bill, was.
Okay. That's going to be my next question. And you knew Bill?
Yes,
You were friends with Bill?
yes,
And to your knowledge, Judy was friends with Bill?
somewhat.
Okay. And were you aware at the time in the summer of 85 that Stephen Avery had already been arrested in connection with a reckless endangerment charge respecting behavior that he had engaged in towards Sandy Morris?
Yes,
Did you know the story of that matter? Did you know what the dispute was between the two of them?
somewhat, I think, but in general.
Okay. Did you, during the time that you worked in the sheriff's department, were you supervised by Leroy Bielke?
No, just as a jailer, not as a jailer.
Okay.
As a patrol, I would have been, but not a jailer.
Okay. And have you and Bielke had any discussions about the matter involving Stephen Avery and Sandra Morris?
During that year, I was a jailer.
In the summer of 1985.
Oh, no, I wouldn't have had any mingling with him at that time.
Okay. At the time that Mrs. Burnson was assaulted, and before then, had you ever had any talks with Bill Morris about what Steve Avery had done to his wife?
Yes, I must have. It wasn't really coming back, but I had to have. I know I had to have.
Okay. Had you ever talked with Bilky about Bilky's investigation of what Stephen Avery was said to have been doing to Mrs. Morris?
No,
Okay. Did you have any knowledge in the summer of 85 that there was any relationship, family relationship between Ramona Marcel and Sandra Morris?
no,
Do you remember discussing with your then wife Judy when she came home that evening what had happened to Mrs. Burnson?
no.
Did she tell you the story of what she had been doing that day and evening in connection with the Burnson assault?
I would think she would have, but I don't remember it.
Okay. Do you recall whether she told you anything about, well, strike that. Let me back up a little bit. Do you remember about what time she got home that evening?
No,
Do you know whether or not it was past midnight?
I wouldn't have the faintest idea.
Okay. Do you remember anything that she discussed with you about conversations that she had had with Ramona Marcel that night, immediately before she got home?
No,
All right. Since the time that you divorced, have you had any conversation with your former wife, Judy, about the Stephen Avery case?
none.
When it became public that Stephen Avery had been exonerated and Gregory Allen inculpated by the DNA analysis, did you have any conversation with Judy Dvorak about the case?
No,
When that same information became known to you concerning Stephen Avery and Gregory Allen, did you talk with Leroy Bilkey about that case, about the Avery case?
no.
Have you talked to Leroy Bilkey at all about the Avery case since then?
I saw him 3, 4 weeks ago, a month ago, something like that, at the sheriff's department, real briefly in the hallway. I don't think anything really came up on it other than I knew that he was going to be giving a deposition or something, but
What did the two of you talk about?
just the fact that we were going to have to give a deposition, but we didn't talk any specifics or anything on it.
Since the time that Stephen Avery was exonerated and Greg Allen was inculpated by the DNA, have you had any conversations with Tom Kasurik about this, the Avery case?
No, none.
I'm going to give you a document here. We're going to go off the record. This is the interview by agents from the Wisconsin Department of Justice of your former wife. And it's fairly lengthy. It's 2.5, almost 3 pages. So I'm going to ask you to take your time and read it. And then I'm going to be asking you some follow-up questions about some of it.
Okay.
Off the record for 6 minutes, back on the record.
Mr. Dvorak, have you had the opportunity to read, and I'm going to characterize it for the record by exhibit number 15, pages 5602, 03, and 04. Have you had the opportunity to review that?
Yes, I have.
I notice on the first page that your former wife left the department in 1989. You see that? It says in the first full paragraph before the end of the page, she worked in the sheriff's department from 82 to 89.
Okay, I see it. Yes.
All right. So she left the department while the two of you were still married.
Yes.
Okay. Was she terminated?
No.
Did she leave of her own accord?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not there was any dispute between her and Tom Kasurik when she left?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Why did she leave?
She got a full-time job at a nuclear plant.
All right. That same paragraph goes on and says that after the assault of Burnson, Kasurik contacted Dvorak and asked her to go to the hospital and take a statement from Burnson. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you remember Judy telling you that when she recounted to you what had happened?
Object to the form?
Not really, no.
Okay. Do you remember whether she told you on any occasion that she was the person who identified the assailant of Penny Burnson as being Stephen Avery based on the description that she heard Mrs. Burnson give of her assailant?
Objective form, foundation. But go ahead, sir.
You can answer.
I'm sure it must have been, but I can't really remember it. But it would have had to have happened from what I've. The trouble is, you've heard so much from other people over the years that I know that's the way it kind of happened.
Yeah. Are you saying that you don't remember whether...
I don't remember her saying anything about it to me personally, no.
So you think your knowledge could have come from some source other than her?
Possibly.
Okay. Did she talk to you at all over the years about how the composite was made by Couchet or what happened in the hospital room? Any of that?
Again, I can't pinpoint that I definitely remember that, no.
Okay. Is this something that you have knowledge of from multiple sources?
Correct, yes.
In that regard, who would the multiple sources be from whom you have that information?
Can't remember anybody specific.
Did you ever talk to Kalanchik about what happened at the hospital that night?
No.
Ever talk with Kasurek?
No.
Ever talk with Couchet?
Couchet? Yeah, over the years I have. Possibly something could have come up that triggers.
What did Couchet tell you about what he remembered happened at the hospital that night?
That I've got no specifics.
Anything in general?
No. Well, just that he made a drawing apparently, and I guess Judy had seen the drawing, something to that effect.
She saw the drawing that night?
I wouldn't know when, but something that seemed to recall that she had seen it sometime.
Okay. The next page, the second page of the report. The second full paragraph on that page. According to this, she tells the Department of Justice investigators that when she took the statement from Burnson, there was another detective in the room with her. Do you remember her telling you who the detective was that was in the room with her?
No.
All right. Remember whether she told you it was the sheriff?
No.
You just don't remember?
No. Nothing at all on that part. No.
I bet. Okay. There are several places in this document where there's a description about what she says based upon living directly across the street from Stephen Avery, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In the middle of the page, for example, quote, Dvorak said she was familiar with Avery, but they were not friends, end quote. Is that something that you knew as a result of knowing Judy's thoughts?
Well, I'd agree. I guess they wouldn't have been friends because they never associated with each other. So there would have been no basis to be a friend as far as I know.
Well, apparently there was a basis for her to form some of the opinions that she formed when she made these statements.
Object. Argumentative.
Is that right?
Bascom, also foundation.
Again, I wouldn't have known a yes or a no on that.
Okay. She tells the investigators that she knew Stephen had been in and out of jail several times.
Correct.
Was that something you knew at that time?
Well, because I knew she worked at jail, so often she would have had contact with him there.
All right.
And she would have known.
That's interesting.
Very.
I thought about that she was a jailer while Stephen was in.
Yep, that's right. You know what's even scarier, though? You know what's even scarier that I picked that back up higher that I've read it, but I forgot.
What's that?
She got a job at a nuclear facility. Scared
Yeah.
shit of them. And it didn't blow up. It didn't blow up. Sorry.
Yeah, I just think that his memory is very selective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to be. Because earlier he said that now that he didn't really hear anything about this bad relationship, but now he seems to remember something. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, it is 20 years, right?
Well, yeah, basically.
Yeah. But still,
Yeah,
not sure how much I'd remember after 20 years.
same here.
Specific conversations and such. Yeah.
Yeah.
What line were we on?
I think 18,
21.
21. Yeah, sorry.
All right.
And she would have known.
And did she tell you what she thought of him as a result of knowing him from the jail?
Could have, but I don't remember anything about it.
It wasn't positive, was it?
Bascom object to the form.
Foundation also.
You can answer.
He said he didn't remember.
Again, I don't remember a yes or a no on that.
Are you telling me that you did not know your wife's attributes about Stephen Avery during the time you were married to her and you lived across the street from him?
It was getting
Attitude.
close. It was getting
Sorry.
closer to our divorce, and we didn't do a lot of talking at that point anyway. That's plausible. But I suppose, I guess, I could kind of remember there was maybe a negative feeling somehow. But otherwise, conversation-wise, I couldn't remember anything that she had said, plus or minus on it.
Mr. Dvorak, I believe you testified you were divorced in 1991.
Correct.
This was in 1985, 6 years before your divorce.
Correct.
Even by then, you and your wife weren't talking about things?
Yes.
So your testimony then is that you did not know your wife's attitudes towards Stephen Avery, even though you were living together and you lived across the street from him.
Not enough that I can remember distinctive negative towards him.
Would you agree with me that the statement that you've read that she gave to the investigators for the Department of Justice indicates that she did have negative feelings towards Stephen Avery?
Yes. According to the statement, yes.
Okay. And you didn't know about that, I believe is what you...
Not to that effect, no.
Okay. Do you remember talking with your wife at all about what she thought of the composite that was drawn by Couchet?
No.
Did you talk with her at all about what she thought concerning the photo array that was provided to Mrs. Burnson,
No.
in which she identified Stephen Avery?
No.
The statement at the bottom of the second page says that after she left the hospital, she went to help with the search warrant. Do you see that?
Correct, yes.
Did she talk to you at all about that?
No.
Did she talk to you at all about whether she went to the Avery home in order to execute the search warrant that night?
Can't recall. No.
All right. If you go to the top of the third page, there's a paragraph. I'm going to read it into the record. Quote, Dvorak described Avery as an abusive man. Dvorak said that she did not know if Avery was abusive toward his wife, but Dvorak stated that she has observed Avery chained his son with a metal chain in the front yard. Dvorak said this was Avery's way of babysitting his children. It did not come as a surprise that Avery could commit a crime such as this. Dvorak said this assault did fit Avery's pattern of previous crimes, and the profile was there. Did your wife share any of those feelings with you that she had towards Stephen Avery?
No. Nothing that I can recall. No.
Pause here on line 3, line 4, I'm sorry. You know, if she's a reserve deputy and she observed this, why didn't she arrest him? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's a cop. I mean, why isn't she? And if she can't do it or is afraid to do it, calling other people and say, "Look, this guy's got his kids chained up." So she's making the statement, yet she's a cop and didn't do anything. Is that what I'm? That's what I'm getting out of what this is. Her statement.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, just wanted to point that out. Continue on.
Line 9.
4.
Line 4.
Oh, further on down the page, there's a paragraph, and I'll quote it. Quote, Dvorak described Avery as a very vindictive man, end quote. Did she ever tell you that? That's what she thought of him?
No.
Quote, Dvorak said that Avery was not nice to other inmates when he was in jail, and Avery always had a look in his eye that made her uncomfortable. Dvorak has always had a feeling that Avery could not be trusted, end quote. Did she ever tell you that about Stephen Avery?
No.
Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of other documents here. Counsel, this document that I'm going to show the witness is Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, date stamp 329 and 330.
Thank you.
Again, I'll ask you to read that, Mr. Dvorak, and then I've got a couple questions for you.
We're going to go off the record while we do that.
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you.
Off the record for looks
Off
like
the-
2 minutes. Back on the record.
First of all, Mr. Dvorak, with respect to the exhibit marked Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, page 329 and 330, in the lower right-hand corner, do you recognize the handwriting?
Yes.
And whose handwriting is it?
My ex-wife, Judy.
Okay. This indicates that at about 12:15 in the morning on July 30th, that is to say the early morning hours of the night, the day that Mrs. Burnson was assaulted, your wife spoke with Mrs. Wayne Marcel, correct?
Correct.
You've had the opportunity to read the entirety of this statement. Did your wife tell you on that evening or the next day that Ramona Marcel had told her about Stephen Avery?
No.
At any time did she tell you about that?
No. I don't recall anything about any of this coming from her.
Okay. Okay, that's all.
Hold
We're
on just a
done
second, guys. Oh, is that it? That's it for this one.
That's it.
Yeah, that is it. Huh, what about that? Okay. I got to mute for just a second. You guys can talk about this for just a moment, but I will be right back.
Okay.
Well, maybe he got confused between all these wives. Who told him what? But I don't know if I can believe that Judy Dvorak was so professional or thought that this was so insignificant that she wouldn't share the news with the spouse, especially the one who's kind of working the same circle, so he could relate
You
to
would
the
think so,
happenings, right?
but again,
I can't believe he wouldn't be asking her about it.
right? With the guy living across the street.
Yeah, a neighbor,
Mhm.
frequent flyer, gruesome stuff, kids chained to the pole, you know.
But again, he's had 3 wives. The guy probably doesn't remember anything.
That's what
Probably
I'm
not.
saying. Yeah.
He's married to her for 19 years, so he's probably half dead.
Yeah, right.
That was mean.
Yeah,
I did
what a
also
cutie.
want to. I also want to point out what Kelly was asking there at the end, and this is going to become a big deal in October. And this is he asked her if Judy ever talked to David about Ramona Marcel. This is a big deal because of what Judy Dvorak did. It's crazy what she did, and it's so clear. anyway, for those that don't know, I won't spoil it. I'll just leave it at that. I did want to say hello to.
That's going to come up in links, you're saying?
No, it's going to come up in Ramona Marcel. She's got a deposition in October.
Oh, but not tonight.
No. I said
Oh,
later.
well,
I apologize. Let's see.
Much later.
Yeah, Ramona Marcel's will probably come up the next time we do depositions because hers is also on the 11th. And I said there was a bunch on the 11th. There's 3 on the 11th. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the 13th. And then the last one is Couché. That's on the 26th. So, but Ramona Marcel's is going to come up the next time we do depositions, probably. And do you want me to spill the beans, Susan? Do you remember or you don't?
I don't remember.
Spill it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, according to, she wrote a report about this too. This is Dvorak. She wrote a report that she had interviewed Ramona Marcel and that Stephen Avery was up in the area where she lived and was driving a van that reportedly took some kid. He was spotted around. He was a suspect or something of that nature. Remember?
Wasn't that up by Crivets?
I think so. I can't remember. Yeah, we covered this a long time ago.
It was a total lie. Right?
Total lie. Complete lie.
Yeah.
One of Marcel says, I don't know what you're talking about. You'll get it though. It's crazy what she did.
Judy did that?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. She fabricated a report.
How far away is Crivets?
Sounds like Stephen Avery. That's fabrication as well.
I think it's a couple hours, Jay.
Is that the same county?
90 miles.
Up there, or the
90
cabin.
miles. They got the cabin. Yeah, I think it's 90 miles. I can't remember for sure, something like that. Before we continue on with Mr. Lenk, I wanted to say hello to who did I miss here? Travis, I know's here.
Travis, James Crane.
Yep, James Crane, Scooby the dog.
That's up where Stephen did all his thieving and.
Yes, that's where he did all the robberies. That was with his buddy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
But I'm confused why she's reporting that. What's she doing up there?
Well, that's a good question.
Good question.
I mean, is that even in the same county?
No, absolutely not. No.
Well, then why is she filing a report in a different? That's not even her jurisdiction. What the hell?
I know. It's crazy.
Maybe Marcel had a cabin up there as well, but lived in Manitowoc. I don't know.
Not here.
So was Stephen Avery present for Mr. Dvorak's deposition?
I think so. Yeah, I think he was. I think he was present for all of them. I'd have to look. I could probably pull it up.
Yes, he was. He was present for Dvorak. I want to see for the other one.
Yeah, I think he was present for all of them. And of course, up until middle of August, Jody was there too. I think most of the time.
Yes, he was present there too.
Yep. Hey, there's Mary Kopp. Thanks for coming, Mary. Okay, so you guys want to do a little switch up on the reading? Give you guys a break or what? Because this one's...
I'd like to have a break.
Okay, this one's 50 pages, so okay. I'm going to give you a break then. I'm going to put...
Do you want me to read questions, Susan?
I was going to let Kay take a spot.
Okay.
I mean, you could read the questions and Kay could do the answers or whatever.
Are you happy to read, Kay?
I am.
Awesome. I'll take the lawyers then.
I meant to mention again here, we switched dates. We moved forward here to the 11th. So a couple of weeks later, 3 weeks, I guess, basically.
20 days. Yeah.
Yeah,
20
and
days,
this is the first one of that day. I don't know what they did that morning. Maybe they went out and had a long breakfast. Who knows? I'm kidding.
James Lenk.
We have Kelly
Missing
and Glenn
link.
Kelly and Glenn are both here, so never you'll have to do both parts if Glenn speaks or whoever does. So that's fine. And
So
then
I'm
we
doing
have.
Lenk and who else?
Oh,
No,
I'm
that'd
sorry.
be K.
That'd be
Is
K.
K reading Kelly? Yeah. So Kelly
Yeah.
and Glenn, K.
Okay.
Yeah. And then who's this person here? This is a new one, Kate Kaiser. So Susan,
Uh-oh.
can you do Kaiser? I'll do Bascom. Let me see here. I'm seeing it. Okay. Okay. Let's make this easy here. If you can do Kaiser and Amy Doyle, I'll do Bascom and Mayer. How about that?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We have somebody that's jumped in. Who's here? Dr. Silkman. Hey, Doc. Glad you could make it.
Hey, Doc.
Hey, thank you. Thank
Hey,
you,
Dr.
guys.
Silkman.
Hey,
How you
great
doing?
reading, guys. Yeah, good. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this David Dvorak, he was married to Judy for, almost for about 19 years, and he's on his third wife at this point in time, so he's moving through them.
Yeah, I have a feeling he actually fears Judy Dvorak. Still.
Well,
And
I mean, they read out this section here about,
yeah,
you remember where Judy claims that Stephen had his kid chained up in the yard, and she's a freaking cop, and she doesn't do anything?
yeah.
What?
It's you have to. What's come across from what I've heard so far is this incredible code of silence.
Yeah, oh yeah. Definitely.
Absolutely nobody rats on anyone. It's as simple as that.
No, there was only one. It was Kalanzik was pretty open. He didn't really hold back much, and
No.
that's the one. I think maybe. Let me see here. I think it's Kalanzik. Marcel Morris. Yeah, Morris is coming up on the 11th. And we got Colburn, Fred Nicholson. That's another detective. Dvorak is on the 13th. Ken Peterson, Conrad. We must have already done Kalanzik. Yeah, we've already done Kalanzik. And that's the one that the sheriff was there. He came and watched.
Right. Yeah, Kasarik was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't, but that guy didn't hold back much, so I guess he didn't have too much fear of him.
No.
But yeah, I agree with you, Doc. It's big code of silence, and I don't recalls, and yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, but this Judy, man, that's really frightening, actually. If she made up that story about a kidnapped kid and about, somebody chaining their kids to a tree, that's just vicious.
And also to his truck. Correct.
Yeah.
And also to his truck. That's right.
Yeah. And
again, nothing was done about it. And was that reported actually? Or is that just her flapping her mouth?
How long was this chain? I've seen people have their kids on dog leashes so they don't run out in the street or whatever.
Like at Disneyland, yeah.
I imagine that's what he was doing.
If he was doing anything. I mean, this is very specific.
Right.
Yeah,
so
and I do think there was
actually...
Is there
like an official report on any of that?
No, I don't. As far as the chaining his kid up, not that I'm aware of, but the other about Ramona Marcel,
There's a report
absolutely
there, yeah.
There is definitely a report written there. And for her
when they spoke to her, she goes, "I don't remember saying that. I never said that." It was all just
It's not my verbiage. Yeah,
it was all these recantations. But what you said is 100% correct. If they had observed all of these horrible offences, why not just simply call the police or go over there and arrest him?
Right, she's a reserve deputy for crying out loud, and so is her husband.
Yeah.
So she's just going to flap her gums about it later on to smear him because she didn't like him clearly. I'm not saying he's a likable person, but
I find it really interesting that she was a jailer, probably when he was in for the cat deal.
It's very possible. I can't remember when she started exactly, but that's very possible. That was 82.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that very interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she said he treated the other inmates like shit or something like that.
Yep. That's right. Got a couple more people before we start. I see Sila 442.
Hey, he's Serbian. He's my fellow Serbian countryman.
There you go. There you go.
Do you know how rare that is?
Well, yeah, it's a little rare. I mean, I know there's a lot of Serbians around.
Country.
Small world. Yeah. And then we have Rhonda SD. I don't think I've seen. Let's see who's that. Oh, never mind. That's Neverly.
Yeah.
Okay. James Crane. Judy teamed with Senator Morris to discredit Avery for some reason. That's exactly right, yeah. James.
And Dr. Silkman called it. He did the research on Judy Dvorak and the whole pencil crochet and drawing of the sketches, and he called it. He says that he figured out that Judy Dvorak was his neighbor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was basically building up a profile of Stephen Avery and coming up with all these false reports. And that's why this deposition was so embarrassing, because it just basically revealed their inner thoughts of what they thought about Stephen. And the fact that nobody now recalls anything, and it's not my verbiage, and I never spoke to my wife about this. And who was it, that guy who basically said, no, he didn't know anything about any of the cases? And you think, wait a minute, you're in the department. You don't know what's happening in your
undersheriff, yeah.
Undersheriff, right? And never, you're into nursing, right? You know, when you have new shifts that come on, you have like a Passover.
Absolutely.
You basically, hey, these are the current cases. This is what's on the books. And that guy had no recollections of anything.
And also, you get the information like off the record, all the dirt, who's difficult, who's funny, who whatever. You know what I mean? You get it all.
Hey, let me tell you, it's the same thing. It's the same thing in factory work too. First shift goes in for second shift, you get your pass down.
Yeah.
It's the same thing everywhere. And this guy, Kliment, he didn't know anything. He's like, no, I don't remember. No.
As an undersheriff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to me, you know, to summarize it, I reckon there would be a lot of fear and intimidation in that department. They're scared to talk because of the ramifications.
Well, yeah. Could you imagine if he says, oh, yeah, I heard about it. Well, what did you hear? Who told you? When? Who else? You know, and so forth.
I think the fear of God had been put into him by Kasurik.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. These guys, when you hear the depositions, they were shutting doors, right? They weren't opening them because, you know, the attorneys, they were just looking for an angle to ask further questions. And so they did a Mark Rohrer. I don't recall. That's
on top of that, Doc, you know, Glenn and Kelly were really thorough, and they had all the investigative reports that the DOJ had done. And I think that really caught a lot of them really off guard. Like, okay, I got this report here that you did with, and then, you know, you got people like Judy Dvorak that her ass is puckering. You know, it was stuck to the seat.
Yeah,
it's not my verge. I didn't say that. I didn't say that like that.
Dang it.
I don't recall. So, anyway, all right. If you guys are ready, all right, we got our parts assigned. Neverly, you're going to be Mr. Glenn and Kelly. Kay, all you got to worry about is being Mr. Lenk.
We'll call you Jane. The other way around, I think.
Oh, is it? Did we do the other way around? Okay, all right. I'm sorry. You're right. Kay,
doesn't matter.
You're Glenning. Yeah, you're Glenn and Kelly. I didn't mean to screw that whole thing up. Okay. And then Neverly, you're Mr. Lenk. That's all you have to worry about. And so you guys can get us started whenever you're ready.
Okay.
By Mr. Glenn. Morning, Mr. Lenk.
Morning.
I'm going to have a few questions for you about your own background and then a few questions that will relate to your involvement with the Stephen Avery case and some related matters, okay?
Okay.
Now let's get started out with some obvious things. How old are you, please?
56.
And can you give me your employment, say, starting 1980?
1980. I believe I was working at the time for Michigan Bell Corporate Security in Michigan.
Okay.
Prior to that, I had worked for the Detroit Police Department. And then I moved over here in 88 and I worked at Fleet Farm for a year. And then I got on the Sheriff's Department in December of 88.
In what capacity were you with the Sheriff's Department?
I started out as a jailer and then I worked up to the road, became a road officer.
Okay. And when did you become a road officer?
I think it was about a year later, so it must have been around December, maybe of 89.
Okay. The record should also reflect that Mr. Avery is here now.
Thank you.
How long did you stay as road officer?
A couple of years. Then I became part of the Metro Drug Unit.
And when was that roughly?
92, maybe.
Okay.
After that, I got promoted to sergeant, went back into the jail for a couple of months, and then became a road sergeant after that.
And where does that take us in calendar years?
I was a road sergeant from 92, I believe, until I became a sergeant up in the detective unit in, I believe it was 98. I became a lieutenant of the detective unit in May of 93 or 2003.
So, lieutenant of the detective unit in May of 03?
Yes.
Okay. And you stayed in that capacity until when?
Currently.
Okay. So that's where you are, on the same title and same position?
Right.
All right. Have you, while you were with the Sheriff's Department, had any involvement with the Stephen Avery case that involves allegations of sexual assault of Penny Bernstein?
Other than I wasn't aware of it until I got the copy the other day. I did send out evidence in 2002 or something like that.
Okay.
And then the statement that you have in front of you.
Okay.
That's the only involvement.
So back in 1988, when you were around, you didn't have anything to do with any of the ongoing Avery materials, if there was anything going on at that time?
No, sir.
And similarly, in 95 to 96, when there were post-conviction efforts, you were not involved in any of the investigative aspects of that?
No.
So you are aware, I take it, that in 2002, 2003, there were actually 2001, there were post-conviction efforts again submitted on behalf of Mr. Avery that related to DNA analysis of certain evidence. Is that correct?
I knew that because I had to send stuff to the crime lab.
Right. And in that capacity, as somebody associated with the detective unit, you at one point were involved at least to the extent of submitting evidence to the crime lab, true?
True.
Okay. Can you tell me who directed you to do that?
I believe it was a court order that came over stating that it should be sent to the crime lab.
And is that an order that would apply directly to you, or would it go to the sheriff and then the sheriff would give it to you, or how did that work?
I'm not exactly sure how that came through. Normally, it doesn't come to me directly. They just usually send it to the evidence technician.
Sure.
And that time I was in charge of the evidence room, so.
Well, actually, you anticipated my question. So it's because of your role in relation to the evidence room, you believe that that would have come to you.
True.
And it was a simple matter, I take it, of removing items from the evidence bag, bagging them in some fashion, and transferring them to the crime lab?
Yes, sir.
And was that the Madison or the Milwaukee crime lab? Do you remember?
Other than, I don't remember. I would assume it would be Madison, but I wouldn't know unless I looked at the transmit.
Did you physically involve yourself in the transportation?
No, sir.
Okay. That got delegated to somebody else, I take it?
Yeah, it was either delegated or it was sent through the certified mail.
Okay. Now, let me come back to the document you've already referenced, and let me ask the reporter to make this, please. Are we at 125 now? Mr. Kelly, yes, we are.
Reporter, yes.
Mr. Glenn, thanks. Let me show you this document that now has the exhibit sticker on it as 125. I take it that's something you've seen before?
Yes.
Okay. Before I get into questions about the specific document, let me ask whether prior to September of 2003, you had any active awareness that this DNA challenge to Mr. Avery's conviction was going on. I mean, do you follow my question? I mean, I know that you had something to do with locating evidence
Mm-hmm.
and making arrangements to have it taken to a crime lab, but is that something that registered in your mind as an active investigation and wondering what was going on with it, keeping tabs on it, that kind of thing?
No, sir.
Okay. I mean, it sounds to me as though this was simply one of the many tasks that may have come your way in your position. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Didn't have any special significance to you.
No, sir.
Okay. Were there discussions that you engaged in with anybody about the Avery case at the time that this material was being gathered for shipment to the crime lab?
Not that I can recall. I don't recall any specific conversations about sending the evidence in other than sending it. Oh, send it.
Okay, no discussions about the history of the case.
I'm shaking my head.
Or, that this is now a second or third challenge to his conviction. Anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. Let me come back now to September of 2003. You see the exhibit 125 has a date on it of 9/12/03, correct?
Yes.
By that time, Mr. Avery had gone through the court process that led to his exoneration, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I take it as someone with the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, at that stage, you would have been aware of that, true?
Yes.
it was fairly big news at the time, presumably.
Yes.
And again, let me ask whether before September 12 and the preparation of Exhibit 125, you had conversations with anyone about the Avery case. For example, conversations that may have involved discussions of Gregory Allen. Do you recall any such conversations?
No, sir.
Did you know the name Gregory Allen prior to September 12, 2003?
No, sir.
I take it that you had not then had any involvement in any cases involving him, or if you did, you didn't recall it at the time?
I've never had, to my knowledge, I've never had a case with Gregory Allen.
Okay, and how about Stephen Avery? Had you had any knowledge of Mr. Avery or any cases of his? Let's go back to the time that you were involved in sending evidence to the crime lab as of that date.
No, sir.
So I take it that in September of 2003, you were sort of getting your education, such as it was in the Avery matter, true?
That's true.
And is it fair to say that that came exclusively from the media as opposed to partly from the media, partly from fellow officers or others involved in law enforcement?
I would say the majority, if not all, came from the media about the case.
Are you able to identify anybody in the sheriff's department with whom you had any conversations about the case?
The only one,
Other than what's reflected in this memo?
okay, the only one that I had mentioned, or actually had it mentioned to me, was when I saw the picture that was drawn by then-time Chief Investigator Couchet.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that it was involving a case, sexual assault case in Two Rivers.
And how did you happen to see that?
It was hanging on his wall in his office.
And can you describe what it was? Was it only the composite, or was there also a photo with it?
You know, to my knowledge, it's a composite. I don't know if there was a photograph there or not.
Okay. Could have been. I mean, it's not that you have a recollection that there was not a photograph there. Is that true?
Right. It could have been, or it could not have been.
Okay. But what you recall now is the composite.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, maybe you said this and I just lost it. Can you tell me about when it was that happened? Even if it's just when in relationship to something else as opposed to when on a calendar.
I'm sure it was sometime when I first came up to the detective unit, 98 or so.
Okay.
I'm not positive.
Well, do you recall conversation with Mr. Couchet at that time about the composite, circumstances under which it was prepared, or the case?
No. He just said, quote, "Doesn't that look like the information that was given about the suspect?" End of quote. I said, yeah.
What information about the suspect?
Just the description that was given.
And how did you know what description?
He told me the description and he said, quote, "This is what they described and this is the picture end of quote. And there may have been a picture next to it so I could compare it." Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's probably
He he had them
That's
framed
what I was
together.
wondering.
They were both in the same frame, as I recall.
Yeah. Framed is framed.
The photo and the sketch. Yeah.
I think so.
And nobody noticed that it's one and the same, like the details. Apparently not. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Line 10.
Because it would be easier, obviously,
Sure.
if it's comparing the photo to a composite.
Yes.
So that would have been roughly 5 years earlier than the memo that we've got in front of us as 125.
Roughly, yeah.
And did Mr. Couchet say anything else about the composite, about the preparation of the document, or that it was his first time or his best one, or anything at all that stands out in your mind?
No, he was just happy that it turned out well.
Sure.
Other than that, he really didn't elaborate.
And so now you know that the exoneration of Mr. Avery has occurred, and the fact that Mr. Allen has been identified as the perpetrator of that offense. Have you had any conversations with Mr. Couchet about the accuracy of the drawing in retrospect?
No, not really.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's 20/20 hindsight at that stage.
True.
But just wondering whether you've had any conversation at all with him about it.
Uh-huh.
You're shaking.
No, other than looked like the picture.
Right.
You know, looked like the drawing or whatever.
Okay, could we go off the record for a second? I just want to close the door behind us.
Off the record for a minute, I guess. Not even a minute. Back on the record.
Exhibit 125 is identified. Okay, now let me ask you to take a look at 125, please. You've already indicated that you'd seen that before. And let me back this up a little bit. I see the date on here of September 12th of 03, and I see that the content of the document indicates that you were talking to Sergeant Andy Colborn and had certain conversations with Sergeant Colborn. And at the very bottom, it indicates that you later went to Sheriff Peterson. And obviously, I'll come back and go through all of this. I'm trying to find out, first of all, whether this narrative describes events that all took place on September 12th, or did any of this take place on September 12th, or is it September 12th simply the date on which you wrote the report? That's a real confusing question.
It really is.
It is my recollection that everything took place on this date,
Okay.
September 12th.
And can you tell me why it is that Exhibit 125 would have been prepared?
At the time that Officer Colborn gave me the information, although it was vague, because of the circumstances it come out already about this Avery case. I thought it may or may not be relevant. So I said, maybe you should pass that on to the sheriff. That's how we ended up going up to Sheriff Peterson.
Okay, and when you say, I thought that maybe you should pass it on, is that you talking to yourself?
No,
Or are you talking to Colborn?
I had mentioned that to Sergeant Colborn, that he should probably go up and talk to the sheriff and at least tell him what you have.
Okay.
Whether it's relevant or not, that's not his decision.
Sure. Well, let's go through this then, please. We've got a conversation on September 12th between you and Sergeant Colborne, and it's apparently taking place in your office. Is that right?
Yes.
And the conversation had something to do with one of the detectives that I don't even need to get into with you, I don't think, unless you're going to tell me that that conversation was in some way related to the Avery case.
No.
Okay, sounds like it wasn't.
No.
Okay, so after this, or maybe it's part of this unrelated conversation, something was said about the Stephen Avery exoneration, I take it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me, flesh this out a little bit and tell me your recollection as to how that went?
You know, I don't have any recollection. In fact, I had forgotten about this statement until it was brought to my attention.
Okay.
I didn't think anything of it too much at the time, and I just forgot about it.
So, having read this, your recollection is not refreshed about that?
No, I don't know what else was talked about.
Okay. But you do know that whatever the conversation was about, one of the detectives, you do know that whatever the conversation was about one of the detectives, it was not a conversation related to the Avery matter?
Right.
And I take it when you prepared Exhibit 125, you did so in an effort to be accurate, correct?
Yes.
And as complete as you thought was appropriate to the circumstances?
Yes.
You had by that time been involved in law enforcement, either in Detroit or in private law enforcement, if you will, as in the sheriff's department for many years.
Yes.
And had written many reports by that time in your life?
Yes.
And knew the importance of accuracy and completeness in a report, correct?
Yes.
So you also recognize that a person had been incarcerated for some 18 years for an offense on which he had now been exonerated, correct?
Yes.
And knew that that was a very significant event in the criminal justice system, correct?
Yes.
So when the subject was brought up, it was a subject to which you paid close attention. I mean, this was a big deal in the media at the time, and you've already indicated that it was a significant matter in the criminal justice system, true?
Mr. Bascom, objection, multiple. Mr. Mayor, and form also.
You can answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was a big deal.
Well, sure. And because of that, I mean, this report came into existence, true?
True.
I mean, you have lots of conversations about lots of cases in your daily activities that don't lead to the generation of a report statement like this, correct?
That is correct.
So now let's go through the report. And again, can you tell me what your own report writing style was? If you were trying to take down something verbatim or a quote, would it be your practice to put quote marks in, or do you not generally use quote marks in the report that you wrote?
If it's an accurate quotable statement, I usually use quote marks.
Okay, so so this you would consider not to be a quotable statement, but rather more in the nature of a summary of a statement. Is that fair?
Right.
And Sergeant Colborn is telling you that he was working in the jail division around 1995. Is that
Yes.
safe to say? When it says probably 1995, is that Sergeant Colburn's term, probably 1995, or is that your term?
That's my term.
Okay, and would that have been based exclusively on what he said, or would you have attempted to relate what he said to something you knew about for 1995?
Did we lose Neverly?
Maybe.
Oops. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Now I
Yeah,
can.
now.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
Line
I didn't have any recollection of 95. It had to be something that he was relating.
Okay, so would it be a fair inference for a reader of this report to conclude that Sergeant Colborn indicated that it was probably 1995 that the events he was about to describe had occurred?
Yes.
Okay, and he said he received a telephone call as opposed to a personal visit, correct?
Correct.
And again, there isn't an issue about whether it's a telephone call as opposed to a fax transmission or a personal visit. I mean, it was a phone call because that's what your report says.
That's what he told me.
And he said that the person calling said he was a detective, and the best that Sergeant Colborn could recall is that he thought the caller might have been from Brown County. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And where this abbreviation of BRO County occurs, that's obviously supposed to be Brown County, true?
Yes.
And he said he isn't sure. I'm sorry, I'm quoting from the report. At the end of that sentence, the four words are, quote, but he isn't sure, close quote. I take it that means that Sergeant Colborn wasn't certain that the caller was a detective from Brown County as opposed to some other area. Is that right?
That's what he told me, right?
Okay. That's his best recollection
Correct.
of something that had happened roughly 8 years earlier.
Correct.
And wherever that detective was from, the detective told him that he was a person in custody. And I note that at first it said, quote, have, end quote. And then it got changed to, quote, has, end quote, for being the present tense.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you were trying to convey, that
Yes.
Sergeant Colborn was saying that the detective was saying to Sergeant Colborn that the detective at the time of the call to Colborn had this person in custody?
That's what he told me, yes.
Okay, and that person, according to the detective, had said that a few years earlier, that person, the suspect, who is in jail, had committed an assault in Manitowoc County. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
And am I interpreting that correctly?
I'm nodding.
Ms. Dole.
Line
I
9.
think we lost Susan. Ms. Dole, you have to answer.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And you used the phrase quote an assault, close quote. And again, the report doesn't use it in quotes. I'm just trying to let you know that you know what words I'm quoting here. Does quote an assault, end quote, as the term would have been used by you in September 2003, mean a sexual assault, or could it be any kind of assault?
It could be any kind of assault.
Okay. If it had been referring to a sexual assault, would you have put down quote sexual assault, end quote, as opposed to an assault, or don't you know?
Yes.
You think you would have?
I would have wrote that down, yes.
Okay, so you think that what Colborn was telling you at the time was just the phrase an assault?
Yes.
Okay. That was what the detective told Colborn was an assault.
That's what he told me, yes.
Yeah, okay. Detective, I'm reading the last sentence of the second paragraph. Quote, this detective also told Sergeant Colborn that he believes someone was arrested for this crime already, end quote. Did I read that accurately?
Yes.
Well, and again, what that sentence is telling us is that the detective believed that someone had already been arrested for that crime that the person was in custody was saying he had committed. Is that correct?
That's what it...
Ms. Dole, I'm going to object, like Foundation.
Well, I mean, it's your report. That's what you understood?
That's what I understood from Sergeant Colborn.
Well, sure. And continuing on to the next paragraph, quote, Sergeant Colborn said the detective wanted to speak to someone in the detective unit, but Sergeant Colborn can't remember who he advised or passed this information on to, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And again, that pretty much speaks for itself, right? I mean, the detective that he thought was from Brown County told the sergeant that he, the detective, wanted to speak to somebody in the Manitowoc Detective Unit. True?
True.
Ms. Dole, I'm just going to object, like Foundation, unless you're saying that unless you're saying what Colborn told him.
Sure. I mean, that's all based on what Colborn told you, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah. And when we say, quote, in the detective unit, end quote, are you meaning that Sergeant Colborn was referring to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department Detective Unit?
Yes.
Because that's what you guys were in, correct?
Yes.
And Colborn can't remember who he advised or passed this information on to Did Colburn tell you that he did in fact advise someone or pass that information on to someone, but he just couldn't remember who it was?
That's the way I took it, yes.
As opposed to saying, I don't know if I told somebody, or I don't know if I advised somebody.
No, I didn't take it that way.
You took it that he did in fact pass the information on to someone, but today, 8 years later, wasn't sure of who that person was.
Correct.
And again, that's based on what Sergeant Colburn said to you.
Exactly.
And this indicates that Colburn said he was later informed by someone that the case was already solved and the right person was arrested. Now, the quote, he, end quote, that's in that sentence that I just read in the second to last paragraph here, that's Sergeant Colburn, correct?
Correct.
I mean, he's not saying that he's still quoting this person from Brown County. I mean, that's Sergeant Colburn saying that Sergeant Colburn was later informed by somebody that the case was already solved and that the right person arrested.
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me. And again, Sergeant Colburn couldn't recall who it was that told him that the case had already been solved. True?
True. That's what he told me.
Did he make any guesses about that or say, gee, it could have been this person, it could have been that person, I'm just not sure?
He wasn't sure. He said it probably. The only thing he said is, quote, it probably wouldn't be Jean Couchet because I didn't know Jean at the time, end of quote.
Okay.
So
he could sort of exclude Jean Couchet, but that was as much as he could do in terms of identifying that source.
correct.
And you indicate that you later went to Sheriff Peterson to pass on the information, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'll come back and talk about that for a minute. But let me just talk about your state of mind on September 12th, 2003, after receiving this information. You recognize that what Sergeant Colburn was saying could be important information, correct?
Yes.
And again, I mean, that's why the report is prepared.
Correct.
And that's why the decision is made to go to Sheriff Peterson to pass on the information.
Correct.
And again, I have to state some obvious things, but certainly it wasn't your job to pass on every single bit of information that came to you on every single case that crossed your desk to Sheriff Peterson, correct?
Correct.
I mean, part of your job as a supervising law enforcement person was to use your own discretion and your own judgment in determining what's important and what's not, and what needs to go to the sheriff and what doesn't, correct?
Yeah, most of the time.
Sure. And I mean, and sometimes you might be ordered by somebody to give me all information that comes in or something.
Correct.
And you would do that then, true?
Correct.
But I take it nothing like that has been given to you as a directive with respect to the Avery case?
No.
In point of fact, do you have a recollection of there being a directive from Sheriff Peterson that the Avery case was not to be discussed outside the department with anybody? And that directive coming out around September 12th of 03?
I don't know when it came out. I remember at some point there was a directive that it shouldn't be discussed.
Okay, and as specific dates, that's just not something that you have recall of?
I don't recall.
Okay, so the state of mind you had on September 12th was that this information should go to the sheriff, right?
Right.
And can you tell me why that would be?
Although it had already no specifics into it, I thought maybe under the circumstances with the Avery case that may or may not have some relevance, and I thought it should be brought to the sheriff's attention.
Okay, and how do you do that physically? I mean, do you call to make an appointment, or do you go knock on a door, or what was your access like in September of 2003 to Sheriff Peterson?
I think I just went up and knocked on his door.
And did you go with Sergeant Colborn?
I believe we went together.
Okay, and was Sheriff Peterson available?
I believe he was.
Did you talk to him right then?
To my recollection, I would assume it was right then, but I can't say absolutely it was right then.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a recollection of whether any part of the report that's Exhibit 125 had been prepared by that time?
No.
That is, by the time you went to see Sheriff Peterson.
No.
So this document, 125, didn't begin to get prepared until after you talked to Sheriff Peterson. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
So do you recall at any time during the meeting with Sheriff Peterson there being anyone else present besides yourself, Sergeant Colborn, and Sheriff Peterson?
I don't recall.
Do you recall whether the meeting stayed in Sheriff Peterson's office as opposed to moving somewhere else?
I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a sheriff that didn't stay in his office. I mean, we never left the office and went somewhere else.
Okay. Do you recall whether Sheriff Peterson took any notes of what you were saying?
I don't recall.
Do you recall whether what you were saying was recorded in any fashion?
No.
No, it wasn't, or no, you don't recall?
I don't believe it was, but I don't recall specifically. Jeez.
When you and Sergeant Colborn were there, did you report what Sergeant Colborn had said to you, or did you simply ask Sergeant Colborn to tell the sheriff what Sergeant Colborn had told you?
I don't know exactly how it went down. Usually, if I take someone to talk to a supervisor, I usually lead into it with a quick summary of what it was and then let someone else explain it.
Sure. And that's probably what would have happened based on your own experience and practice.
It's probably what happened.
Okay. It certainly would not be the case that Sergeant Colborn would not be allowed to speak to the sheriff.
No.
I mean, that's the point of his being there, correct?
Correct.
So that if the sheriff has questions, he can follow them up with Mr. Colborn?
Correct.
And do you have any recollection as to how long that meeting lasted?
I don't, other than it was probably very short.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a recollection of anybody saying anything in particular?
Other than the sheriff said, quote, "Give me a statement as to what you just told me," end of quote.
Okay.
That's how this came about.
And when you say that's how this came about, is it that direction from the sheriff together with your own feeling of the significance of the event that caused you to prepare the statement that's here as Exhibit 125?
Correct.
Let's
And
pause
after
right
you
here. Let's pause right here for a second, Lawn 4. We've you guys have done really well. We are we're well over halfway through.
I think
Typically
we can do it if we pick up the pace a little bit.
If we what?
If we pick up the pace.
Oh yeah, we're doing well. I mean, you guys, we're only at 8:17 my time, so we're doing really well. No, I just wanted to pause for any commentary about what we read so far. Comments, whatever people may have, may not have, may not be any comments. But
well, there's a bunch of comments in chat. Rumor has it, and James Crane Yoga, they're going at it in a good way about this whole thing. Yeah. Rumor has it says, how is it possible this Brown County detective has never been named? Do we know the day the call was made on? Can't employee records be accessed and who was working at the time? James Crane says it's bizarre.
It is bizarre, and these are questions, and not only that I've asked, others have asked. I know Doc has, and many others in the community. I mean, this is something we really latched onto many years ago, and I just can't understand it. By the point of time that right after making a murder, probably before, if I'm honest, came out that this detective hadn't been identified. I find it really odd. I would imagine those records could have been found back in real time pretty easily. So it's a great question, great comment too.
And then James Crane says, but Colburn did remember years later after Stephen gets released and makes a report, right? Can't remember at the time, but 8 years later he remembers.
Yep. Doc?
I was going to just make a couple of comments here. This would have been very embarrassing for Peterson. It would have also been very embarrassing and very uncomfortable for Lenk and Colburn. And I just thought of something. You've got Stephen Avery in the audience listening to all of this. It's very interesting that who are the two detectives which are charged for planting forensic evidence against Stephen? Lenk and Colburn. Now, what is interesting here is that Stephen is probably hearing, maybe for the very first time, that the detective who had his hands on the forensic evidence that had to be given to the crime lab was none other than Lenk. And, I reckon that Stephen Avery probably put two and two together, because it's rather interesting that where did they find the blood vial? The blood vial, which turned out in the end to be not the source of Stephen Avery's blood, but it was in the courthouse amongst the documents, and the sex kit that was taken was, instead of being placed in the proper crime in the forensics store, it was just left in the clerk's office. And I'm wondering whether Stephen put two and two together, because he's listening to this in real time, thinking, oh God, these two guys here were directly responsible for not passing on the message. I'm thinking the way that Stephen would be thinking, because he's looking at Colburn, he's looking at Lenk and thinking, wow, potentially if that message had gone through back in 95 or 96, I would have been a free man. So I'm wondering whether he's put two and two together and thinking, these two guys, Lenk and Colburn, are very, very suspicious. It's interesting that both of those detectives were named as potential detectives who planted forensic evidence against Stephen. I'm wondering whether the depositions clued him up.
Well, maybe, but there's another incident, and I don't want to say it wrong, but I'm almost positive in 97 or 98, Lenk also sent some material out, or I don't know if that was talked about. I don't think it was mentioned. I know he talked about 2000, one, I think, that was said. I don't recall 97 or 98. I'm pretty sure Lenk's name was on sending out fingernail scrapings. That box, you don't talk about. You remember it, Doc? Had fingernail
I do,
scrapings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was,
I'm pretty sure
and
Lenk's name was on that too, right?
correct. And they showed that in MAM, Lenk's name down at the bottom. So
Yeah.
he's sort of like the evidence. He handles the evidence. He transmits the evidence. And I reckon that Stephen is putting two and two together here. That's only my personal opinion. But I mean, you could tell that Lenk is very uncomfortable. This whole thing was just an afterthought, right? Dotting the I's, crossing the T's. You know, it's something that had to be done. The report had to be written.
Yeah.
You know, write something down. And of course, what does Peterson do? Put it in the safe, I believe, right? So it was an afterthought, but it was very, very important. And Steve is listening to all of this. And of course, what happens a month or so down the track? The guy gets arrested for murder.
Yeah, that's right.
That's incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating and it's just disgusting, actually. Here we have all these officials being deposed. And what is the most common answer? I don't recall. I don't remember. Not sure, but most likely not. I don't know. And in the meantime, we have a attempted rape, right? On Penny Bernstein. We have this thing with Sandra Morris, chain kids and so forth. And then this call for Stephen, look how it impacted so many people. And nobody knows anything if you ask the police department.
Well,
right.
How is that possible?
Well, because Neville, in my opinion, they were given a directive to shut their mouths and don't open the door to further questions and scrutiny.
Bury it.
Absolutely.
Bury it. Deep
Absolutely.
Because it's going to be embarrassing for them. Sorry, Neville.
Yes, and the lawsuits, they are totally trained on this. What I'm saying is that it's just not right. To say that it's not fair, life is not fair, as we know. We've been all impacted by unfairness of life, but this is not right because you can help it. And as you said, for Stephen he must be just shaking his head. Like, what the fuck?
Well, imagine what Stephen would have been thinking, that the two detectives that found the key in his bedroom is none other than Lenk and Colburn. And a month or so prior, he's listening to Lenk and Colburn talk about, I don't remember, I don't recall, no, I never heard about that. I'm sure he must be putting things together. And plus, he would have been talking to his civil suit attorneys thinking, hey, there's something going on here. This does not seem right. And out of the blue, Teresa Horbach goes missing. Stephen gets arrested. And, you know, the wheels in his head are starting to turn here. But what is remarkable is a total lack of accountability by the NPSO. It is so shocking. It is so bad that no one remembers anything. And that is a deliberate ploy, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. And as I said, he must be just shaking his head because his life has gotten so bad. He stayed in jail, as we know, for extra 12 years 12 years, basically, if you count the 6 for the
12.
other thing. Yeah, there's no accountability. And how do you make him talk? You can't. If he doesn't recall, he doesn't recall. End of story. It's maddening.
Correct. But what is frustrating here is the fact that this was such a big case at the time, Stephen Avery's arrest, and the fact that, and Jack 61 is correct, in 1996, Judge Hazelwood gave the order, hey, let's do some fingernail scraping testing and let's get some DNA, et cetera, done. And Judge Hazelwood had to make a decision because they did find extra alleles under the fingernail scrapings, right, Jack 61? That's right. Judge Hazelwood said, look, I can see the defense argument. I can see the state's argument. Penny Bernstein could have simply have touched somebody, and as a result, there were extra alleles. Stephen, I'm sending you back to prison. And what is remarkable here is that no one from the MTSO seems to recall the Stephen Avery. Nothing. It's
Right.
as though it never existed. Right?
Yep. That's right.
And of course, they're doing a CYA, covering their asses. And you could see it. It's painful. The civil suit attorneys know it. Stephen knows it. But that's their answers, right, guys? I don't recall.
Yeah, I'm sure that Glenn and Kelly were, having conversations with Stephen, even if Stephen, we know, he's not a dumbass, but he's not the sharpest tool in the shed either. But I'm sure they explained it to him, even,
Yeah.
exactly what you said, Doc, that they put it together. They knew.
Yeah. And don't forget, Jody Stokowski also went to some of these hearings as well.
That's right.
So that makes it even worse that she flipped and said, oh, no, Stephen's the murderer, right? It makes it even worse because she would have heard firsthand how these detectives were having selective memory, lying, basically making sure they don't let any conversation out where the civil suit detectives civil suit attorneys comprise the door a little bit open. Remember when he said, what conversation? What do you mean about that? So Lenk knew immediately, shut shop, shut up, don't disclose anything. That's the way they work, Jack 61.
Oh yeah.
That's the way they worked in that department.
Yeah, and Lenk, his answers, he's not totally shut down, but they're pretty clipped. I mean, you can tell the lawyer is digging. He's digging, and he's trying to get something, but Lenk's not giving him really much of anything.
Correct. And that is deliberate, because remember what Peterson said? Remember the directive he told his detectives about the media? Do not say anything.
Yep,
shut up, stop. Do not disclose or talk about anything at all. So it's a blanket cover. Correct.
I think that this is just an opinion that I've thought about, that when the civil suit, especially when the suit was filed, they may not have known, or maybe they did. I don't know. I'm talking about Manitowoc County. If Glenn and Kelly had contacted this detective in Brown County or whatever county, and found out who they were and found out what was said, because you can't tell me that this detective that's sitting there talking to someone in this other county didn't know that this was Gregory Allen.
Well, what's remarkable here, did you hear the argument that the attorney was having with Lenk about the word assault? You notice how sexual assault was a taboo word to say. You know why? Yes. Because it would have been patently obvious who they were talking about. So because they made it assault, it was a general assault. Are you trying to tell me that Gregory Allen, they obviously knew who they arrested in Brown County. Are you trying to tell me that Gregory Allen didn't tell them exactly what he had committed?
Or that they hadn't ran his record, ran his global report? Of course they knew.
Yep. And hence why the detective from Brown County said, shit, I better ring up the MTSO and find out what the hell was going on here. They deep-sixed it, Jack 61. They deep-sixed it. We've got the right guy. We don't want to know about this. And how remarkable is this? The guy that actually committed the crime admitted to committing the crime, and the detectives in the MTSO said, we don't want to know about it.
That's right.
We don't want to know. Thank you.
That's right. And Link, and of course, Colburn can't remember who he talked to.
No.
Going back that far.
No.
Well, I'm not going to get off into that because I'll get mad again because again, anybody calling, I don't care if it's the jail or wherever, that doesn't somehow positively identify themselves, that leaves the door open for anyone to call a jail and say, or a law enforcement agency and say, hey, this is Lieutenant such and such over here, and I need some information. Can you run that for me? Sorry.
Of course, Jack. Think about it. When you call a department store, they say this is so and so, it's such and such department.
Right.
right?
Exactly.
When you
There's
make
got to
a
be.
call, you say, hey, this is Neverly calling from blah, blah, blah.
But remember what Peg Lockenschlatter said in her report. Oh, well, the only fault here was really just a lack of communication between the police and the county, and hopefully things will improve in the future. How many Gregory Allens do you have running out there? How many
That's right.
people come in and confess to have committed a crime and specifically state you have someone in prison that was sent to prison for committing a crime that I committed? How many
In
times
Manitowoc.
has that occurred?
That's
In
right.
Manitowoc.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly.
It'd be a rarity. Absolutely.
Absolute ridiculous.
Yep, I agree. Okay, I think we're good. Looks like we got some good conversation going on in the comments. Let's get back to it. Now I'm going to ask the ladies, either one of you need a break.
I do not need a break. I would just like to pick up the pace. That's all.
Yep. Okay, you good?
Does that mean I'm reading too slow?
No, just
Read
a
faster.
little bit. So
I can let someone else.
No,
I can
you're
let
doing
someone else
great.
go.
No, you're doing great, unless you don't want to, of course. You're doing great.
Line 4, is that where we are?
Yep.
What page? 35?
34 of the PDF. Line 4.
Hold on. Okay.
And after you prepare that statement, what's your practice in terms of what you did with it? Does it go to a case file? Does it go to the sheriff? Does it go to any particular place?
This particular statement went to the sheriff.
All right. Did you see it after it went to the sheriff?
No, sir.
When's the next time you did see it?
When Amy came to talk to me last Friday.
Okay, and Amy, for our record, is Miss Doyle, the lawyer?
Correct.
Seated to your left. And I take it at that time you read the statement?
Yes.
Were you able to recall anything beyond what you've told us so far about the obtaining of the statement?
No.
Well, besides Sheriff Peterson, do you recall having any discussion with anyone else concerning what it is that Sergeant Colborn had said?
I don't believe so.
Well, do you recall having any conversation with Sergeant Colborn after September 12th, 2003 about this subject?
Other than a couple of days ago when he mentioned he got a phone call and he had to do a deposition.
Okay, and actually I was going to be coming to asking you that. But I'm talking about in roughly September of 2003, for example. Any follow-up in which you bump into Colborn and say, quote, remember yet who it is that you got that phone call from? Or, end
No.
quote.
No.
Quote, who it is that you talked to, end quote, or him coming to see you and saying, quote, excuse me, you know that conversation we had earlier? I think the guy that I talked to was so-and-so, end quote.
No.
So as of today, Mr. Lenk, it is, I'm sorry, what's your title? Your lieutenant?
Lieutenant of Detectives.
Okay. I didn't mean to diminish your title by not using it all the time.
Sure.
Lieutenant, when you came in today, did you have any information about the subject matter of Exhibit 125 than you can recall having back in 2003?
I'm shaking head.
That is, have you picked up any new information of any kind since you prepared the report that you don't remember?
Other than actually getting the report and remembering, I actually did it. I had totally forgotten about it.
Okay. So no conversation. Well, setting the report aside and talking only about the incident described in the report, that is a contact from some other law enforcement agency about a person in custody for an assault and wondering if that person was involved in an assault that was prosecuted earlier or that was going on earlier in Manitowoc County. Was there any conversation about that general subject matter that you can recall having with anybody else?
No.
Did you ever talk to any other people from Brown County about it, or any other Brown County law enforcement agency, including, for example, the City of Green Bay Police Department?
No.
Or Oshawa?
Sorry. I don't know.
I don't know what this is.
I
Benin? I don't know. Or anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay, so again, I think I'm approaching beating the dead horse, but I just need to make sure that the horse is in fact dead.
No.
There is not any more information that you have right now, today, about the subject matter of the statement contained in 125 than you had at the time you prepared 125. Is that true?
That's all I have.
Okay, now let me shift to conversations with anybody in connection with this litigation that's going on now, okay?
I'm nodding head.
You had some conversation with Sergeant Colburn in which presumably you told each other about this process that you're involved in here today.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Do you recall whether you contacted him or he contacted you?
I believe he contacted me.
Is he still with the sheriff's department?
Yes.
Okay, so you're both active members?
Yes.
Of the sheriff's department today. And when he approached you, however the contact occurred, whether it was he to you or you to him, was it limited to the question of the existence of a subpoena? Or did you discuss this document? Did you discuss the fact that the events described in 125 had occurred? Did you have any other conversation?
No, not really. He had mentioned to me that he had gotten some kind of contact that he had to make a deposition. And he asked me if I had any contact, and I said yes. I said, I have no idea what's it about. I wasn't even hired at the time. And he had mentioned something about a phone call. And it still didn't register to me until he came out and he said, quote, no, it's about the information I gave you about a phone call I got, end of quote. I said, oh, okay. That's how I remembered it. So.
And did he say anything about having an improved recollection or increased amount of information?
No.
Today as opposed to what he had back then?
Not to my knowledge.
How about conversations with Sheriff Peterson? Was this matter taken up between you and him at any time after September 12th, 2003, to your recollection?
No.
So again, I mean, it's as though as of September 12, 03, sort of a door gets closed on the issue, at least in your mind, and that door isn't opened again until the subpoena comes around?
Correct.
And, well, you're not aware of any other person besides Sheriff Peterson, Sergeant Coburn, or yourself that has ever had conversation about this or discussion about this? Is that right?
Not to my knowledge.
This meaning?
This document.
The subject, yeah.
No.
Okay. Counsel consults off the record for just a minute. In Exhibit 125, in the third paragraph, quote, Sergeant Colborne said the detective wanted to speak to someone in the detective unit, but Sergeant Colborne can't remember who he advised or passed the information on to, end quote. Do you remember that?
Yes. Oh, this is the
Okay.
first yes we got, you people.
Okay, again, that's Sergeant Colborne indicating that the person he recalled as a Brown County detective wanted to speak to someone in the Manitowoc County Detective Unit, correct?
He said whoever he had talked to wanted to speak to someone in the detective unit.
Right. And again, I think we've already agreed that that's the Manitowoc County Detective Unit that he's referring to.
That the person he wanted to speak to?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And in short, he wanted to speak to a Manitowoc County detective who might know something about this other case. I mean, that's what you understood?
Correct.
Sergeant Colborne to be saying that the other person had said to Sergeant Colborne?
Correct.
And the testimony that you gave earlier about the composite drawing, that what's Mr. Couchet's title at the present?
At the time, he was chief investigator.
Okay. The chief investigator, Couchet, had in his office, as I understood your testimony toward the end of this discussion, you were thinking that there probably was a photograph there as a comparison point.
I think there probably was, now that I'm thinking about it, there probably was a picture there so you could compare the two.
Let me try one other thing, then see if this refreshes your recollection at all. Obviously, Inspector Couchet would have had to have gotten a description verbalized to him by the victim in the assault, true? In order to prepare the...
That would be normal procedure.
That's the ordinary way of...
Ms. Dole, I'm just going to object like a foundation.
Oh, sure. And that's the ordinary way that that kind of composite would be prepared?
Usually from the victim or from a witness or...
Well, sure. But I mean from somebody who says they saw the person.
Correct.
And could it have been that what Inspector Couchet was saying to you was the description he had received from the victim and asking you to compare that to the composite as opposed to comparing the photograph to the composite?
No, I think actually it was comparing the photograph to the composite.
Okay.
To see how close they were.
Well, okay. And so what he had was then a photograph of, and I take it the photograph was of Mr. Avery?
I believe so.
Yeah, and again, this was obviously before Mr. Avery had been exonerated of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think you said in what, like 98 or 9, something like that?
Somewhere in my first part of coming up in the detective unit.
Yeah, okay. And at that time, again, I think you've indicated that the Avery case was not something significant to you?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay. I think I'm finished. Anyone else have any?
Mr. Bascom, I don't have any questions for this witness. Ms. Dole, I just have one question. Now, Ms. Dole, I believe you had stated that Exhibit 125 was prepared because of a request made by Sheriff Peterson that you prepare a report. Is that correct?
Correct.
Would you have prepared Exhibit 125 if the sheriff didn't direct you to prepare a written report regarding your conversation with Colburn?
Probably not. Ooh.
That's all I got. Reporter ends it off the record. Wow.
Oh my God. Hey, we did it, first of all. And then the last statement, probably not.
Right.
Ouch.
Boom. Yeah, well, I was thinking this was 59 pages, but it's 50 pages and 6 pages of index. So, boom,
Didn't
we
he
got
say
there.
he ran into Colborn and they ran into each other and just mentioned the depositions to each other? Am I misremembering what he said originally? And then he ends up saying that Colborn called him. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. I think that's what he said originally. We ran into each other or something.
I can't recall at the moment.
I'll look at it.
I was thinking about that. I just can't recall how that all came up.
You can't recall either?
Nope. That's pretty terrible. Me sitting there bitching about them saying I can't recall, but I really don't recall how that. Seeming like they did run into each other, and something got mentioned about the case, and all of a sudden.
I'll scroll back and look.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Doc can remember.
What was the question again, Jack 61?
How this conversation got struck up between Lenk and Colburn about this phone call.
I
thought earlier in this deposition he says something different than he ends up saying.
If I recall correctly, this was initiated by actually Colburn, because Colburn talks about this on Convicting a Murderer, how this whole thing came about. And then there was this misunderstanding between Colburn and Lenk in regards to what they said to the sheriff, Kasarik.
Yes.
How Colburn said, I think Lenk misunderstood what I said. We actually never said it to the sheriff, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, it's becoming more convoluted. So basically the conversation started, if you believe Colburn, by Colburn himself. Because remember how we said, I wonder whether that phone call had anything to do with Stephen Avery. And Lenk said, it would be a good idea if you write it down in a report.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also can't forget, it's noteworthy, it's not case-breaking, but the report that Colburn wrote was not on a standard police report.
No.
And it went into the safe.
Yeah. Sheriff Peterson put it there. Correct.
I have a question.
Yep.
Did we talk about this? If we did, forgive me, because I can't recall, no pun intended. When you're sitting at a desk with a phone next to you and your job is to answer a phone call, don't you have a little pad just like Tree Cohane had, and jot down who called at what time for whom and what about?
I don't know that they logged calls. I know some places do, but I just don't know.
Well, it just seems very lackadaisical and disorganized for important matters like this.
I mean, I don't know about in 95 if it would have been something that would have been. I doubt that it would have been automatically computerized.
No, I'm thinking about pen and paper.
Well, it just may have been something that they didn't do. They didn't log calls. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
It's also possible that we're so aggravated and frustrated by this case that we are kind of not nitpicking, but just asking. These are proper questions, you know what I mean, and logical as well. But in real life, does it happen, and is it logical and plausible to assume that every phone call would be jotted down somehow?
In today's world, that probably doesn't happen very often now because everything, the computerization, a log is made
Yeah.
automatically. But for people that are younger, they don't remember back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. You had to do it by hand. The computers weren't
Yeah.
set up for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Neverly.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say the counter argument. I understand what you're saying, but the counter argument to that was that this was a very rare phone call, right? It wasn't somebody from another county ringing up and saying, I need to talk to the sheriff. I need to find out what type of pet dog he's got, and I want to get the same one. This was involving a prisoner who just got arrested, who admitted to having committed a crime in another county. So it's unique because, remember, Colburn was asked during the trial, well, how many such type of calls do you get? Is it 10? Is it 20? And he goes, 1, just 1. And sort of that made him look really bad because it's quite clear that it wasn't acted upon in the appropriate manner. And that's why the civil attorneys now are drilling into Colburn, into Lenk. Okay, what is the proper procedure? Could you've done something different? And you could see the way they're being very, very standoffish and basically saying, I don't recall, I don't remember. They don't want to give a definitive response because if the sheriff is telling them, hey, look, we got the right guy, Avery's the right guy, do not bother about it, write a quick report, file it, see you later. But to their horror, when Culhane came back with the DNA result, all hell broke loose. I got the wrong guy.
Tell you something else that's a little bothersome to me. I probably shouldn't let it bother me too much, but we have a massive file. We've actually got several from Green Bay, Brown County, going back decades, and there's nothing in there about Allen being at Brown County talking to a detective, yada yada yada. That nothing that I've ever seen. Nothing. And, we don't even have an incident number that we can specific, because Green Bay, they'll respond if you open records request. They're very good about responding very quickly. We don't even have an incident number that we can send and say, hey, can I have the incident report about this guy here, Gregory Allen, incident number, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. So, I guess I'm kind of, go ahead.
Sorry, Jack 61, but it's quite clear that the attorneys, the civil suit attorneys, didn't have that report either.
No, they didn't.
Because all they would have done is slam it in front of them and say, Detective X from Brown County reported this. How come you never acted upon it?
That's right.
So it goes to show either that report got expunged, i.e. saw a shredding machine, or detective was told, forget about it. But if it's official, it has to be written down. It has to be filed somewhere. Someone somewhere has got a copy of that report. It can't just have been vaporware.
That's what I'm saying. It's always bothered me, but the more I've thought about it, whoever this detective was, again, I'm beating the dead horse now. If he's went so far as calling Manitowoc County because of this, he already has the information on whoever this is. We suspect it's Gregory Allen. Can't prove that, obviously, but I don't know who else it could be. I mean, because we don't have any other suspects in front of us, or potential suspects. So he gets to become the fall guy. It's just that vacuum of information. Got a call, don't really know anything about it. It's Brown County. They said that they got some guy claiming this, and this. I'm telling you, to me, it reeks to high heaven. Just reeks.
Yeah, but
it does.
It does. But the thing is that who knows how many other calls, and I'm not talking about the Avery case, just generally, in jails and whatever, if you want any company thinking, as long as you don't get caught, if you get caught, you are in trouble.
Right.
As evidence as this case.
Well,
and another thing I wanted to say, all these, I don't recall, answers, as frustrating as they are, as ridiculous and embarrassing as they are, and as much as they think that they're doing a good job by protecting the police department, law enforcement, it's so fishy that anybody can see that something's going on.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that this particular civil suit, had it been successful, it would have had a far-reaching consequences for the MTSO, because their practices would have been investigated. Exactly what Neville alluded to. Okay, if it happened with Gregory Allen and it didn't set off any alarm bells or red flags, has this occurred in other cases, in other crimes? So there would have been a thorough investigation. And it then brings up the Ricky Hochschlatter case, right? So
Sure.
that's particularly damning. Why? Because you've got the same characters involved in that particular case, right? So potentially it could have had far-reaching consequences for the MTSO and for Kasserek. And that's why Pegel had to whitewash it, put a lid on the genie jar, and shut it. Boom. Do not go there.
Oh, she had to. There's no doubt about it, because it would open up Pandora's box for, well, definitely for Manitowoc County if she hadn't. And, well, potentially other counties too. I mean, I just, as good as Glenn and Kelly are, I can't believe that they wouldn't have already been, as soon as they found out about this call, that they wouldn't have been requesting information from at least Brown County. Again, this kind of brings up my suspicious nature, and maybe I shouldn't even say it, but we can't even say for positive that it was in Brown County. We think it is because it's mentioned here. That's all we got to go on. But it could have potentially been Sheboygan or, one of the other neighboring counties. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because there should have been a report. And this massive report that Seeking Truth for Good God, she got this back several years ago, 650 pages, I think. And we've gotten even, Sunshine Christina and I got even more than that after that initial big whopping pile of stuff. This is all on Gregory Allen. It's a massive file, but no report from any Brown County detective having contact with Gregory Allen in 1994-95. For me, that's a problem.
Yeah. It's sort of, there is some type, I'm only speculating here, but there seems to be some type of weird association between Gregory Allen and Dennis Vogel.
Oh, yeah.
Because
No
Dennis
doubt.
Vogel knows Gregory Allen very, very well. And even Tom Bergener, who went directly to see Kasserek and tell him, hey, I think you got the wrong guy here.
Right.
And then when you look at the MO of what occurred on the same beach a year prior.
That's right.
And are you trying to tell me that alarm bells didn't go off? Because what's the saying? Only a small percentage of criminals commit the majority of the crimes. And
right.
Here you've got a guy under surveillance. Here you've got a guy who had committed a very similar offense on the very same beach, and they pluck Stephen Avery's name out of the ether and blame it on him.
That's right.
Holy shit, there's something weird going on here. I don't know what it is, but remember, it was Dennis Vogel who had Gregory Allen's file in Stephen Avery's file. That's the very first
Yeah.
we asked Greaseback, and you're thinking, hey, wait a minute. This cannot be a fluke. So what you're seeing here, guys, and that's why the depositions are so unbelievable, you're seeing corruption occurring 101 in real time. This is how a department deep sixes something and remains silent.
Well, they had.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's true that it was Brown County, they had help in deep sixing any report from a detective, potentially talking to Gregory Allen or some other suspect. I say Gregory Allen, but that's only a suspicion. That's speculation. We can't prove it.
Correct.
Okay.
So, sorry, Neville.
No, you're gonna.
Yeah, because unfortunately I've got to go, guys. I've got to go to the hospital for an appointment. But the important point here, right, that's why when you look at convicting a murderer, what did they do? they trivialized the civil suit. Don't worry about it. You got a couple of 100,000. It's all done, finished. We had no, remember what Fassbender said? We had no reason to go after Brendan Dassey. Bullshit. They needed a narrative. They needed a narrative. Why? Because the investigators had no idea what happened to Teresa Halbach. And that's why, when you're looking at the reading with the crew on what we're doing, that's why Bobby was put under immense pressure, I reckon, by Kratz. And isn't it incredible, guys, how one word completely flips the narrative.
It does.
I saw Stephen as opposed to I saw Teresa, and
That's right.
all comes together. All comes together in the circle of corruption. And that's why these depositions, Jack 61, they're gold, absolute gold.
Well, they are when you deconstruct them, and I'm not necessarily saying line by line, but when you look at it close and the questions and answers, because Glenn and Kelly are stellar. I mean, they're just stellar lawyers.
Oh, they're awesome.
Unbelievable.
Sharp
All right, guys, I must go.
Before you leave,
yo,
can you please refresh my memory? Somebody in the chat, I think Lisa, is asking, did Foul Play cover Ricky H's case? Did we do that? No, that's what I thought.
No.
It was Rubber Ducky, right?
Rubber Ducky covered it. Oh boy, there was a lot of controversy about that. But no, Foul Play haven't covered it. To do it properly, you have to spend weeks and weeks learning all the material. Yeah. There's a lot to go through, but it is a very, very important case, no question.
Yes, and it's same players, basically.
Same players, including Bushman.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Yeah. We're not going to be here much longer, Doc. Thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of questions from James Crane. He said, do we know when this report was made and why was it made?
You're talking specifically about the Colburn report?
Yeah.
I'm guessing. It was made September 13th. It was right after Avery was released.
Yeah. 12 or 13, right after.
Yeah, that's right. It was like the day after he was released. This whole thing blew up about this phone call, and that's when this conversation happened between Lenk and Colburn that he should make a report.
Colburn went to Lenk. He took him to see. Lenk took Colburn to Peterson, and Peterson said, write a report. He did, and he put it in his safe.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was a CYA move. I don't know how. Again, and I say that because if the report had never come out and Glenn and Kelly didn't have anything to throw anything down on the ground and say, aha, there's no point for the report to even exist. Right? Basically. Again, I still think that they were unsure if Glenn and Kelly had found something out about this detective that called. I can't prove that. It's just a gut feeling. I just see a reaction that didn't necessarily have to happen because it opens up all kinds of doors that we can't, and questions we just literally can't answer. It's unfortunate, but it's really frustrating too. Because I want them answered. I don't like keep talking about it. I want an answer to it so I can nail it shut. Go ahead.
Yeah. And did they ever investigate the Brown County at about time who worked, what shift, and who called?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Well, that's like, closing the loop. It would have been.
Well, yeah. I mean, at least on the record, I don't know of any kind of investigation that Glenn and Kelly might have done, or maybe one of their investigators. I know they had people, I'm sure, that helped them gather stuff. But as far as I know, none of that ever happened. They didn't investigate. I'm not saying they didn't request documents, because they very likely did. But again, we don't know for sure.
Yeah, it would be only logical to say, oh, okay, so because we have approximate date.
Yes.
And I'm sure that they keep records of who worked on those shifts, but it could have been anybody. It's very hard. I don't know how people do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the weird schedules. Oh, yeah, I worked plenty of them in my lifetime. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, so in regards to Ricky H., it's a fascinating case, not in a good way, of course. So I know that Robert Ducky covered it. Take it with a grain of salt. But who else did? Was it Convoluted Brian or the Zipper?
Oh,
Somebody else
the
covered
George
it.
Zipper blog. I think there's some on, actually, I think there's some on both. Yeah, you
Okay.
kind of got to be careful with it. We've dabbled into the Ricky Hostetler case.
We did, but not officially. We
No.
didn't cover it like Stephen Avery. We talked
No.
about it, but yeah. And
Yeah,
then at
there's
the end, recently it became really dramatic, and we wanted to stay away from that. So
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's some things that were said and done that should have never happened, in my opinion.
Exactly.
But there was and I got flipped on this by Sherry Lynn Pontillo. There was a CD of calls. I've talked about this before. There's a CD of calls. I don't know. I think it was around 20 or 30 phone calls, phone interviews that some detective in Manitowoc had done with various people involved in Ricky's case. And I requested this CD. It's been probably close to a couple of years ago now, maybe a year and a half. And I think of the 5 or maybe 6 people with phone calls that are on the CD, I think 4 of them are dead. They've passed away. But they denied my request to get these interviews, saying that it's still an open case. It's got ice on it. I mean, that case is ice cold.
Wow. Well, yeah, because nobody took accountability.
No.
Yeah.
That's right. So, unfortunately.
But it's a fascinating case.
It is, and really sad, for Ricky's mother.
Super sad. Yeah.
For Ricky's mom.
Super
sad.
For Ricky and his mother. Yeah.
Yeah, really killed her. It really hurt her.
Oh.
Okay. What else we got? Anything?
Well, I think that we got that 3 out of 5 people on our panel have fallen asleep.
We've killed them.
We killed them. I just want to thank Susan and Katie did it for reading, because that's just gruesome.
It is. Can be.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're reading. Some of these are really difficult to read.
Difficult,
I want to say
because
hello.
you have to get into their verbiage, should I say? No pun intended again. And just like the cadence of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. I want to say hello to Barbara. Barban's with us. She jumped in.
And Bethany also. She's from
Bethany?
the land down under.
Oh, really? Why was I thinking Bethany was in the UK for some reason? That must be crazy.
No, there's so many people.
Crazy,
Oh, you're not asleep. Hey.
No, I was just letting other people talk.
Oh. Yeah, and
I was actually trying to find that part in the transcript too, and it wasn't Lenk's answer. It was Kelly's question.
Okay.
When he said, "Did you?" But Lenk doesn't correct him when he says that. So you ran into Coburn and talked about this deposition. He doesn't say, no, well, actually, he called me. Anyway, I would just misremember how that all went down. Yeah.
Well, it seems like in Manitowoc, a lot of things happen by chance. Didn't Kratz say that what's his name, Wiegert dropped in and say, you're not going to believe this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Guess what happened over here this morning? Well, nothing. Not in the morning time. Yeah,
both Jack and I were wrong.
Yeah. Yep. Bethany's from Pennsylvania.
Mm.
There you go. Okay. Any other questions? That I've kind of been scrolling up, but if I missed a question, I apologize. I tried to, as I was scrolling the file, I was trying to watch my iPad for questions. I didn't really see any. A lot of good comments and conversation as always, but
Oh, great.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm good with getting some last words here and getting out of here and maybe getting a little bite to eat. I don't know about you guys, but I get pretty hungry.
Yeah, James
Yeah.
Crane said Ricky's case could be one of the cases that would be looked at if the corruption in Manitoba is exposed. Definitely. Same with Lori Deppes, same with many other cases.
Yeah, the Deppie's case is another head scratcher, no doubt. So, all right, let's go around the room and get some final thoughts, and let's get on out of here.
Okay,
Katie? Okay, may not be able to talk. She might be on the phone. I heard somebody's phone ringing. JD, final thoughts.
Yeah, I was just interested in what everything had to be said. I didn't realize that Judy and the other Dvorak were actually husband and wife, and they were linked.
Oh, Judy and David.
Yeah, I've learned that today.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that Judy was the one that was in the video doing the handover, wasn't he? When he was saying that he wasn't going to go to some meal in round about the 1st or the 2nd of first week of November with the Innocence Project. So I don't know if Judy was in the video then. I didn't know whether I was mixing her up with somebody else.
I can't recall.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
But it was just that when they were going through his desk, they found the invite and the letter and stuff. But I don't know how I was connecting it with her. But Lenk's was interesting.
Oh, yeah, very.
But with regards to Andy Colburn's and the actual initial call, I was just wondering whether or not Gregory Allen has confessed to it during an interview. And then that's where they've made their inquiries from, because he probably doesn't want to get done for it when he gets out of prison for doing whatever crime he'd done. And then they pin it on him. So I'm wondering if he's just coughed to everything to get a lighter sentence. I don't know what it's like in the USA, but that's similar over in the UK, where if you cough to everything that you've done, you're still going to go down, but you don't go down for as long as what it is, because you've cleared up, I don't know, 10, 20 cases that remain open. So everything is taken into account.
Yeah, if you plead guilty, I mean, some of the really terrible stuff, no, you're probably not going to get much slack. But if it's, less severe of a crime, you possibly even, may be able to be sentenced and get paroled, not sentenced for life. And it can have an effect for sure.
I'm just wondering whether that happened, which is what caused the initial Andrew Colburn call. So, there is probably paperwork out there, but you probably, like you say, need the case number that it refers to and whatever police station he was being interviewed at.
Yeah, I mean, if it was whatever this incident was, this Brown County detective was allegedly working, if we had that, we could do something. I could make the request and see what we get back, but we don't have anything, which is unfortunate. So, all right, Jay, thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
Not a problem.
And, as always. Yep, absolutely. Neverly, final thoughts.
Wow. My apologies about the first half an hour or however it took while I was trying to figure out my devices. So that must have been very frustrating, but I switched to the phone and everything's fine. I'm so glad that we did these depositions. As Dr. Silkman said, you can really get into the mind of the offenders at a time. And God, I just love Glenn and Kelly. They're just
Oh, yeah.
wonderful.
They are. They're badass.
So on point. So on point. And that was like the minute I saw him in Ma'am, I'm like, who are these people? You know, when you don't know the players in the
Yep.
beginning, when you watch it for the first time, I'm like, who are these? And I assumed wrongly that they worked for the, you know, that they were like prosecutors and, you know, that they worked for the state, because I couldn't even imagine that Steven could have somebody so good. So I was so relieved when I figured out who they were. So, anyways, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Thanks for reading. Thanks to Kay for
Of
reading, and
course.
Susan earlier. I hate that. I know Susan was tired. She worked this afternoon, so I'm sure she's beat. I'm sure she's
Yeah.
going to take a nap and sleep for 2 or 3 hours and wake up and be
Well,
like,
picture
"Argh."
this. It's cold where she is. She probably, as you said, she worked tired. You know,
Yep.
she's all snuggy in her sofa with a blankie, got a plate
Yep.
of wonderful yummies handed to her, and she just dozed off.
Passed
I
out.
can
That's
see
right.
that. Yeah.
Nothing wrong. Nothing at all wrong with
No.
that.
Yeah.
And so I'll drop this down here. Let's do this. And you know, my final thoughts. I'm not going to add too much to what we've already talked about. These are interesting for me. I've taken a lot, like a lot of people, I've taken a special interest in the depositions because they're a precursor and a run-up to what's going to happen here soon. At this point in time, we're in October, so basically, we got 19, 20 days until this event happens with Teresa. You know, that's how close we are in time frame. And then also, we've been talking about Gregory Allen as associated with this phone call. There's another much larger event, obviously, that also happens in 2005. No doubt in my mind, obviously, the Peg Lautenschlager, the AG's office, and probably certain members of the DOJ higher up. I doubt this was put out for public consumption about the arrest, or not the DNA for Gregory Allen, the warrant for his DNA in June of 05, which is a month after the depot started, and then the arrest warrant written in September of 05. You know, and it's made me wonder if Fallon was informed. He's a long-term employee and probably a very trusted assistant attorney general lawyer within the department, whether he knew. I'm certain Glenn and Kelly didn't know, or this would have been a completely different setup. But anyway, got real interested in this. Some of the ones coming up that we're going to finish up with in October are some of the best. The one with Ramon and Marcel is just mind-blowing. It's crazy. And some other ones too. We'll get to Gene Cachet's last. But anyway, want to thank everybody that stayed around the live chat. Really appreciate you guys. Give us
Thank
a like,
you for all
share,
your
and subscribe.
love. Yeah.
Absolutely. Give us a like and share and a subscribe if you choose to do so. And with that said, I'm going to say this has been a Foul Play production.